If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 61. Sorry about that, Basita said, as they were out of the range of the office, that she had a pinkish blush on her face. Is that really what you want? Harry asked calmly, while we have a contract that ensures your loyalty, I don't want to force you into a situation where you feel uncomfortable. I already know that I will profit from having you around, and I have no problem backing your family. There is no need to throw yourself at myself. I know. But I still feel I am taking advantage of you. At least I can take care of your dormitory for you. And anything else you need. She said it with a red face. And what about my consent? Harry wanted to say, but realized how stupid that sounded in a world like this. Modern world problems that often get abused don't matter here in a world that is somehow advanced and still so medieval. I see. Well, now it's done, he said as they kept following the shadow slave. It wasn't like the situation didn't have its advantages. This would make his plans even more believable. From time to time, they passed acolytes as they walked, before Basita asked, Are you sure alchemy and poti wondering are a good choice for us? Harry had considered sending Basita to another professor to get his free lessons through her, but in the end, if his legilimency worked on acolytes, he wouldn't need it. It had worked on Jaden, who had reached the level of a rank 1 acolyte during the journey. And if not, it wasn't a big loss. 1 or 2 free lessons didn't matter in the larger picture compared to the additional revenue she could bring him by acting as his intermediary. He had chosen Potion Master Croft as professor, so he could use his AI chip to easily learn the art and create potions that he could sell. Even though he was planning to be known as a potion genius, the success rate with his AI chip was too high. Basita would sell a part of his potions for him, so they would generate more revenue without awakening any suspicion. The combined amount of magic crystals we have is quite high for an acolyte starting just out without any real backing. Trust me, we have a good chance to make more through potions without problems. He said it without revealing too much of his actual plans. You never knew who was listening in. They kept following the shadow slave through several corridors, 2 large halls, and a garden. It then stopped in front of an area designed for experimental laboratories. It turned translucent and passed through a door, while Basita and Harry waited in front of it, not daring to even knock on the door. 2 new students? Basita and Harry, hey? Enter. A middle-aged male voice came from behind it. Harry pushed the door for Basita open before following her inside into a room that could only be described as a laboratory. Not one of these modern, white and clean ones, but rather what you would expect of a medieval alchemist, but still with more advanced tools. The whole technological level of this world was strange. In some ways, they advanced by using their magic, but their building and architectural style seemed to be more medieval. The room was filled with strange aromatics, some sweet and spicy, others more reeking or even biting. A huge table in the center of the room, bustling with various test tubes, flasks, and beakers, as well as different apparatus, took up almost half of the room. In front of it stood a white-haired yet clearly middle-aged man, dressed in white robes. His collar was embroidered with golden patterns, and his eyes emitted a golden light, resembling 2 golden gems. My name is Croft. So the 2 of you want to become my students? Asked Croft while putting a test tube he had held back onto the table. Yes, sir. I am willing. Good. Since the school requires me to take on students, I will accept the 2 of you. Croft stroked his beard, observing them studiously, his gaze landing on Harry. But are you really sure, with your grade 5 talent, that alchemy is the correct path for you? Harry nodded, already fed up with the question that everyone seemed to ask him. So be it. Then let's give the 2 of you your initiation. Croft decided, we won't be bothered here. What kind of initiation? Basita asked with interest. She seemed relieved, and Harry guessed she had feared their professor would be as strange-looking as Durot. Your initiation as Magus. So tell me. What is a Magus? A powerful person able to use mystical abilities, commanding fire, summoning storms, and similar powers of nature. Basita started. Harry was calmer, a person pursuing knowledge and always searching for truth, able to harness and manipulate different energies. Impressive. Both of you have the right idea. Harry is very close. Croft nodded approvingly. Magus is a title that has been given to a specific group of people. These people had learned to harness and manipulate the principles and energies of the world. always in a never-ending pursuit for knowledge and truth. Doesn't that mean that a magus isn't necessarily human? Exactly. Any intelligent being can be a magus. Croft nodded. Neither does that mean a magus remains human. Now let us begin with your initiation ritual. No need to be scared, it's quite simple. Croft said as the ground changed and spell formations bustling with energy formed. A dark flame appeared in the center. Give me your hands. Croft ordered and grasped both of their outstretched hands. Following the ancient rites, I will now guide you, Harry Potter and Basita Nightfang, onto the path of becoming a magus. Croft chanted, recite after me. Following their professor's lead, both spoke after him, I swear. I will forever be in pursuit of the truth. Without the permission of my mentor, I swear that I will not reveal any of the information my mentor passes on to me. Their voices strangely combined into one as they recited more and more, the flame in the center growing brighter and blazing stronger until... Congratulations on formally becoming an acolyte. Croft congratulated them. An anomaly has been detected in your sea of consciousness and magical core. This notification of the AI chip had not been completely unexpected. Since then, that part about a change in his magical core has been. As far as he could tell, this ritual had been akin to an awakening, allowing the acolyte to actually harness and control his sea of consciousness. His guess is that one could accomplish it in a much longer time through intense meditation. But he was unsure why it had affected his magical core too. He could already manipulate it. Both of you have already received your starting package, right? Take a look at that crystal ball inside, you are now able to absorb its information. Croft explained, be here tomorrow at 6 in the morning. You may leave now, but remember, don't wander around. Luckily, they had passed the dormitories earlier, or they would have no idea where they had to go. The AI chip was always creating a map of his surroundings, so he would never get lost as long as he had been somewhere before. Harry led Basita back to the dorms, knowing that he shouldn't look around as long as he didn't know the area. There could be a dangerous experiment going on, or he could accidentally piss off a magus. The key in their sacks had the same number, 103, it was more in the center of the dormitory area. There it is. Basita said as she found their room and put her key inside, opening the door. On the other side was quite a spacey dorm, you could call it an apartment, and the moment they entered, it got lit up by some enchantments. A bedroom, a living room, a washroom, and 2 additional empty rooms for their private use. It seemed bigger than what he had read Leyland get. If his memories served right, then Leyland's room was more on the simple side. This one was nicely decorated. The only complaint he had was the bed. It was the only one, a double bed. Still, it doesn't seem to bother Basita. I hope you are fine with this, because I am not planning on annoying the professors for this. Harry said it dryly as he dropped his things onto a table and sat down on the bed. No problem, I didn't expect anything else. Basita smiled. Harry simply didn't get this girl before asking with a finger on her chin, so what is our plan for tonight? Checking our stuff, getting settled, then meditation, and lastly, getting some rest after the long journey. Harry replied with a deadpan. Haha, if you say so. Pouted Basita, making Harry have doubts about his own plans once again. Besides the keys, the sack they received from the academy also contained a set of acolyte robes that had been strengthened with some defensive spells. Even though it was cloth, it had similar defenses to leather armor. Then there was a badge that acted as an ID for the academy and also had some communication functions for the academy to contact their acolytes, as far as Harry remembers from the original story. Lastly, the sack contained a crystal ball with the elementary meditation technique that every acolyte needed to practice to cultivate their spiritual force. Another description of spiritual force could be mental power. It was basically how much magic power a mage could control and store. Magic power was the fuel of any spell, other words for it were mana, ether nano, magicka, and so on, with slight differences between worlds. An elementary meditation technique is just the most rudimentary meditation technique there is. At most, it could carry you to the level of an official magus. Only people without an advanced meditation technique would practice it, since the latter was far faster. Unfortunately, right now Harry is such a person, it would also be troublesome if he had one at this moment because he most likely didn't have the strength to protect it. Advanced mediation techniques were restricted in the South Coast, after all, the people in power kept them in their families. First, he and Basita went to the dining hall for some food. An older acolyte was nice enough to show them the way before they returned to their room. Harry already knew the meditation technique, he had stolen it from Jaden's and the Gotham Sage Hut's apprentice brains. There were slight differences between the two academies' versions, but overall, they came down to the same. He had already cross-referenced it with the help of the AI chip and cut it down to the most efficient version. One thing he had noticed was that the efficiency and speed of the AI chip were much faster than they had been for Leyland at this stage. For him, the analysis had been completed instantly, while for Leyland's, it had taken an hour or so. And Harry already had a theory about it, which would be hopefully confirmed soon. "Are you ready?" he asked Basida as she sat in a relaxed position on the bed and nodded. "Just relax your mind and don't resist." "Initiating data transfer?" "Yes," Harry ordered, and the AI chip began to use Harry's legitimacy to carefully plant the data about the meditation technique into Basida's mind. This way, it was more efficient. A normal acolyte would take a while to truly remember the technique, and even with the direct transfer from that crystal ball, it would take several attempts. Especially since the crystal ball contained quite a lot of clutter. While the time cost doesn't make much difference for a grade 5 talent who could become a rank 1 acolyte in 5 to 6 days, a grade 4 takes already around 15 to 20 days, a grade 3 about a month, a grade 2 half a year, and worst of all, a grade 1 several years. Taking a few days to understand the most basic meditation technique was costly. Especially since it was nothing else but a glorified magical version of mind training. The acolytes meditate on a set of specific runs to raise their spiritual power and their mental power, which allows them to store and control more magic power. The more runes one can form during mediation at once, the more spiritual power the acolyte gains, but the more he has, the less efficient each rune itself becomes. A highly talented acolyte is able to form the runes quicker and easier than a less talented one. Before becoming a rank 1 acolyte, an acolyte can at most form 8 runs at once. A grade 5 talent may already have done this on day 1, while a grade 1 talent would take years to be able to form 8 runs. That is the cause of the massive difference in mediation speed and why he directly helped Basida learn the technique. That way, she would cut down on the amount of time it requires of her. Chapter 62. Once he had implanted a complete understanding of the optimized meditation technique, Harry placed himself on the other half of the bed with crossed legs. With the help of the AI chip and his talent, he got down the first mind rune in seconds, what an average acolyte would need days for. This has been no challenge so far, so he decided to try a few more runes. He limited himself to only 7, he felt he could go further, but he chose not to do so. Being able to meditate upon 8 runes, was a sign he had reached the level of a rank 1 acolyte. Even for a grade 5 talent, it would be an extremely shocking thing to reach rank 1 after one meditation session. A can of worms that he didn't want to open yet. He had gained nothing from the Abyssal Bone Forest Academy yet. If he had to flee because the professors chose to dissect him or one of the families backing the academy wanted to enslave him, the whole journey here would be a waste of time. Once his mind entered a state of meditation, he began to feel the effects of the technique. He could feel the compatible electromagnetic particles entering his body. After a while, he had to stop. Harry had experienced the same with the night training technique he had tried out before. There was a time limit on how long one could practice. This time he felt that his mind was exhausted, while the night training technique had an effect on his body. Each time, it was a very distinct feeling that you shouldn't continue. But it seems one could practice both simultaneously. Night training for the body, meditation for the mind. "Check my status, AI." Harry requested it when he saw that Basida was still meditating. It probably took her longer to form the runes and enter the meditative state, she had no AI chip after all. Beep. Full body scan complete. Brain activity has been stimulated during the meditation process. Each cell of your body has been affected by the absorbed energy particles. Changes in your magical core were detected. The vitality of your body has risen by 0.1, lacking the necessary data to analyze and visualize the full effect. More observation is required. Early the next morning, Harry and Basida, after having a quick breakfast in the dining hall they found yesterday, rushed back to the laboratory of Professor Croft. "Good morning, sir." Basida was greeted as she entered the room in front of Harry. Besides Professor Croft, there was another acolyte. A beautiful green-haired girl. You attempted the meditation technique." Croft noticed as he observed the two of them before saying, as expected of Harry, "But it seems you are closer to a grade 3 acolyte than grade 2 Basida. How did it feel?" He mentioned that because Basida was too fast, she should have taken a few days before she could even start meditating. But this was nothing to worry about, after all, Croft already had his own small excuse ready. In the end, Basida was a grade 2 talent and would take quite a while, grade 2 or 3 didn't really matter to the academy. It took a while until I could form the first rune. Basida admitted. I practiced until my head started aching and I felt dizzy. Harry added his own observation. Good, you should stop once you reach your limit each day. Pushing through will only harm you. But this is pretty common. And you are doing good, Basida, you are very fast. Keep working hard. Croft nodded, pleased with his new students. Come, let me introduce the two of you. This is Bicky, my other acquaintance. These are Harry and Basida, your two new juniors. Croft introduced them to the female acolyte in the room. Hi. Bicky greeted them with a happy smile. Hello. Both Harry and Basida greeted them. As Princess Basida had all the grace of a noble, Harry used what he learned from Leyland's memories and his own experiences in Westeros to perform an elegant greeting. Bicky is your senior. You have another one, he is called Merlin. He has exceptional pointing skills. Croft explained it to them. Many call Merlin a once-in-a-century pody-wondering genius. He is the most likely successor to our professor. Bicky added. Harry had already known about that. Merlin was one of the reasons why he had chosen the same professor as Leyland. As far as he knew, that guy was always in a lab, experimenting, and hard to meet. Once Harry had advanced to rank 1 acolyte and confirmed he could read an experienced acolyte's mind, he would study everything Merlin had to offer. All the experiments and experiences of a pody-wondering genius would give him a massive head start and add a lot to his AI chip database. Haha. Indeed. Merlin has shown outstanding talent in pody-wondering. If there's anything you don't understand, seek his help. Croft smiled, clearly very satisfied with his student. So are the two of you familiar with my requirements? Yes, we have read them while selecting a mentor. They nodded. Good. From now on, the two of you must come here every day to help with the cleaning. In your free time, you may attend the free lessons. As for the benefit of being under my guidance, which includes receiving information on a topic, you can choose and ask me after you've learned the basics. Croft explained, which seemed fair. Thank you, Professor. Both of them bowed. At this point in time, Basida had almost no real information on Magus beyond some general ones. While Harry has extensive knowledge in many fields of magic, science, and alchemy, he was curious about what the Magus world had to offer. The advantage of the AI chip was knowledge. More knowledge made it even more powerful. Thanks to his risky visit to Truth in the Full Metal Alchemist world, he already had an extensive database of alchemical and scientific knowledge. He was in possession of a completely different language of magic unknown to the Magus world that he had learned from the elves in Alagasia, including other tidbits of knowledge, both magical and non-magical. And his experiences in the wizarding world and Westeros have given him extensive knowledge of a different magic system. He was not on the level of Dumbledore or Voldemort, he simply lacked the resources and books to gain it, but what he knew was in depth thanks to the nature of his old gamer system. Harry had a good starting position as Magus and would only snowball faster with all the new information he would learn, thanks to his AI chip and legilimency. I don't need you this morning. Bisky will show you around the academy and tell you about the restrictions. Croft pulled him out of his troubles. Bicky led them through the academy, showing them every important corner and where they were and were not allowed to go. Like, they had to stay away from the residential area of the professors or from the trading post, where acolytes could trade with each other. She showed them the mission post, where they complete different missions, like, for example, cleaning the surrounding area from red-eyed ravens. These missions gave different rewards, from magic crystals to contribution points. While magic crystals were a general currency for magi, used in many different fields as an additional source of energy, contribution points were an internal currency for the organization. The ones for the academy could be exchanged for things the academy offered. Some things could also be exchanged for magic crystals, like spell models, but other goods were only sold for contribution points. Her voice was extremely pleasing, and her looks were not less than Basida's. But she had one disadvantage, she was far too naive. Girly? What would you describe a person who had a crush on a pretty face and would even give up her own future for him, only to be discarded as soon as she had no use? Because that was what happened to her in the original story. They even met the guy who did that to her in the future, that is Senior Fail. He's a genius. He became a level 2 acolyte just 6 months after entering the academy. Bicky's eyes widened, and her face shone radiantly as she muttered. Harry was a bit conflicted about whether he should interfere in the future or not. While he needed personnel in the future, Vicky was a bit foolish. But at the same time, she had the luck to be his senior. He would see what the future brought. Oh, so he has grade 4 aptitude. Basita's question snapped Vicky out of her daze. Not bad, but Harry will be better. What makes you say that? Vicky asked, confused. You haven't heard yet? Harry is a grade 5 genius, Basita gushed, giving Harry a thumbs up behind her back. Harry had no idea what she was thinking, but at least she was building a reputation for him. He planned to use his talent to gain more advantages. Staying low-key was sometimes smart but also boring. Robbing jealous idiots who thought they were great and looked for trouble with him was always fun and profitable. Really? Vicky exclaimed, her eyes now fixed on Harry as she took a closer look. He nodded with a warm smile that always seemed to make others happy, then tried to redirect her attention back to the tour. For some reason, Vicky became more energetic and put more effort into the tour, happily chatting with Basita most of the time. She often glanced at Harry when she thought he wasn't looking. Only later would he realize that she hadn't looked at Fail even once after that. The lesson system at the Abyssal Bone Forest Academy was divided into several categories. First, there were the free lessons, which were essentially long, dry lectures on various basic topics. Questions were not permitted, nor were they answered. Professors would come in, deliver their lecture, and leave. Another type of lesson involved student-taught classes. Students could pay advanced students to tutor them on a topic. These sessions could be one-on-one or in small groups, with the latter being cheaper. Lastly, there were the paid professor lessons, the most expensive option. These provided more in-depth and advanced classes, with the opportunity to ask specific questions, even advanced ones. Though costly, these lessons offered the highest knowledge gain. Harry never had to take a paid lesson, at least not at his current level. The free lessons sufficed for him, as he could use the AI chip to remember all relevant information. In fact, he was tutoring Basita, who had a much harder time following the lessons. He did this in public study areas, attracting the attention of other struggling acolytes. Since he was already tutoring Basita, he offered the other acolytes a good price for his sessions. This way, he had a steady stream of students paying him regularly for lessons, making it his first source of income. This also earned him the reputation of an intelligent and approachable acolyte, bringing in even more students. He also offered one-on-one lessons in his free time, which were, of course, more expensive. Acolytes had other ways to gain knowledge for free. Like the library, if one worked themselves to thick dry tomes, they could gain a lot of information beyond the basic free lessons. If one had an AI chip, it was as easy as flipping through a book. Each day, Harry and Basita would go to Croft's laboratory and help out there. At first, it was mostly cleaning tasks. Croft was one of the more agreeable professors, allowing them to attend each free lesson without a problem as long as they kept up their work. On his 4th day in the academy, Harry decided to break through to rank 1 acolyte, one day earlier than the average grade 5 talent. His professor had been very pleased about that. He had instantly realized that Harry had broken through to the level of a rank 1 acolyte. That fact was a relief to Harry. Before arriving at the academy, he designed multiple concealment spells in the ancient language to hide his magical core from others. But until now, he hadn't been sure if they were working properly. Because the change caused by his breakdown had also affected his magical core. And he really didn't want anyone to notice it. Another thing that confirmed itself was whether he was able to read the minds of an acolyte. The answer is yes. While the changes to the mind caused by the meditation formed some natural unconscious defenses on the mind, someone who practiced the art of legilimency could easily go through these defenses. The only thing he had to be careful of were magic artifacts that protected the mind. But even then, he hadn't noticed anyone with such an artifact. Mind-reading spells were rare and mostly something that an official magus could use. But each magus had even stronger natural mental defenses. It was rare for magus of the same rank to attack each other with mind magic, only a master would do so, and they were very rare. This made magical artifacts with mental defense properties rare amongst acolytes, and they were more there to shield against illusion and similar, which a master legilimency user should be able to bypass. But Harry wasn't a master yet, he was only experienced. But so far, he had only found one person with such an artifact, an acolyte from the Redbud family. The Redbuds, the Lilytels, and the Lilyels were the 3 families backing the academy. They pretty much had control over the academy. They were the ones in control of the resources and techniques required to become an official magus. For most magi without any backing, they were the only way to become an official magus, besides hoping to find the legacy of an ancient magus somewhere. Of course they were abusing that fact by forcing acolytes to sign a binding contract to become magus and work under their family. They have been doing this for centuries and have become quite rich on the south coast. So it wasn't strange for an acolyte of their family to carry such an artifact. It is a bit annoying. But he would get enough practice in legilimency. Another thing Harry wanted to do was read the minds of the members of these families. These families are each in possession of at least a rank 1 advanced meditation technique. The path of a magus is split into different levels. The very first levels are the 3 acolyte levels, which could be reached with the elementary meditation technique. Meanwhile, the true powers in this world were the official magus. To truly become one, an advanced meditation technique was required. On the south coast, these were under the control of powerful families like these 3. Magus were also split into ranks. Each higher rank is far more powerful than the previous one. A rank 1 advanced meditation technique is good enough to reach the level of a rank 1 magus. After that, one has to experiment to further his path. Rank 2 gets you up to rank 2, and so on. There is also another method to reach the level of a rank 1 magus on the south coast, a potion that burns your lifespan for a power boost that brings you into the rank of an official magus. The older you were, the lower your success chance. And this was the most common method used on the south coast. These families and organizations were selling these potions for the service of these possible magus, while making sure they would never be able to overthrow them. Because a magus who forcefully advanced through such a method was far weaker than one using even the worst advanced meditation technique. For example, to get that potion called Grind Water from the Abyssal Forest Academy, you had to sign a contract that you would work for the next 100 years for the academy or one of these families. If you succeed and are very young when advancing, you may have a few years left to live. In most cases, you die before the contract is over. Most of the professors were this way. Harry didn't care about any of that. He already knew the location of an advanced meditation technique. Still, this wasn't enough for him, he wanted more options. And stealing these techniques from the minds of other acolytes was one way to get them. He was already doing that with other things too. Why would he need to pay for potion recipes if he could just take them directly from other students' minds, like Merlin, for example? The same goes for paid lessons, blueprints, spells, or rather, spell models, as they were called in this world, and so on. And Harry knew that these 3 families had at least a rank 1 meditation technique, while the Lilytell family has most likely even a rank 2. They would be his, he just needed to master legilimency. Chapter 63. It's been 2 weeks since Harry broke through to the level of a rank 1 acolyte. Can I help you with something? Asked Croft when Harry approached him after his assistant's duty. Once Harry had successfully advanced to rank 1 acolyte, he was able to take a more active part in the professor's smaller experiments. He was able to prepare some ingredients, so he could learn how to do it properly. An actual acolyte had a higher resistance to dangerous influences and radiation present during these experiments. In fact, not becoming a rank 1 acolyte for too long was dangerous for anyone in the academy, since there were many dangerous sources affecting the people present. While Basita would still need a while with her talent, Harry had secretly cast some protective charms over her. The ancient language was just that flexible and easy to use. Their acolyte robes were also enchanted to shield them a bit from these radiations. But if an acolyte took too long to reach the rank of a proper acolyte, they would receive damage to their bodies and lifespan. In fact, this screwed low-talent acolytes even more. Anyway, this isn't important right now. Yes, Professor. I have been a rank 1 acolyte for some time, and I feel like I have a good enough understanding to actually receive one of the lessons you are offering. Ah, I see. I already wondered when you would visit me. From what I heard, you reached that level a while ago and were even giving lessons to other acolytes. Croft nodded in understanding. Croft retrieved some items from what appeared to be a storage space in his laboratory. Unlike Harry, he didn't have a pocket dimension repurposed into a portable storage space. Such a thing wasn't impossible for a magus, but the necessary ingredients were quite rare on the south coast. For a magus who had used grind water to forcefully become one, it was definitely unattainable or rather impossible to keep. Small, fixed, immovable pocket dimensions were far easier to accomplish, requiring only the right spells and energy resources. These 3 items represent my areas of specialization, Croft said. The book on the left stands for the neutralization of energy, the crystal ball for herbology, and the test tube for poti-wondering. Make your choice. Harry already had knowledge from two of these subjects, herbology and poti-wondering. Fields that his senior Merlin had focused on. Unfortunately, for his money-making plans, he couldn't choose the book, or Croft would realize that something fishy was going on once he started to sell potions. While neutralization of energy was an interesting enough subject, focusing on the removal of spells and curses, it had no immediate use for Harry. I choose poti-wondering. I knew you would pick this. Croft chuckled. The art of potion brewing is extremely complex and intricate. The slightest mistake can result in failure. Every potion master has invested vast resources to gain their expertise. Are you ready for this? Internally, Harry was amused, but this introduction was a bit boring. He had to give Snape the lead if it came to a direct competition between his potions teacher. At least if he compared the introductions. If the old bat hadn't been such an ass, Harry Potter would have genuinely had fun in potions. I am, Professor. I will put hard work and effort into the art. That's the spirit. Croft nodded as he handed the yellow test tube over to Harry. Do I just have to drink this? Asked Harry. A potion that stored knowledge was an interesting concept. He could create something similar with the help of his contracts, but this was basically through cheats. Yes, drink it directly. He would have loved to study it a bit, but he could learn more about it in the future. Harry opened the tube and was greeted by the stench. He was familiar with unpleasant potions, husk polyjuice, and didn't wait long to gulp it down. While the potion was distasteful, its immediate effects were even stranger. His surroundings began to twist and swirl, and Professor Croft transformed into a long, distorted noodle. It was more surreal than he had ever imagined an actual drug trip could be. Then, his entire body seemed to melt into a puddle and vanish into darkness. How do you feel? Professor Croft woke him from a strange dream, and his surroundings returned. That was crazy. Your reaction is mild. Some weaker minds lived their whole lives in an illusion after drinking such a potion, and nobody woke them. But the information is already in your brain. Croft explained, and Harry could already confirm that it was there. He couldn't wait to cross-reference it with the information he had taken from Senior Merlin's mind. With the help of the AI chip and his own past poti-wondering experiences at Hogwarts, Harry had already had a decent success rate in brewing, even on his first try. Unfortunately, he couldn't sell any potions yet, or he would become known as an unparalleled genius. Even a once-in-a-century genius like Merlin took a month to successfully brew a potion. And Harry had succeeded with his first batch. While he had no problem with being known as a genius, he had no interest in becoming such a genius that any of the families backing the academy wanted to recruit him at any cost. Probably he could make an actual profitable deal with them if they considered him an unparalleled genius. They may even offer an advanced meditation technique, but Harry didn't want to go through the trouble of having to break a magical contract with them. His freedom was more valuable than a bit of easier short-term profit. If he had a similar success rate to Merlin, they would still try to recruit him, but he could play them that way and gain a bit more preferential treatment until he was ready to leave, without anything binding. After all, the Abyssal Bone Forest Academy had at least 4 different major factions backing them. 3 major families, and Principal Siley, a rank 2 Magus himself. While they were working together, they were competing at the same time. It didn't mean that he would throw away the potions he was brewing at first, he would store them safely inside his inventory pocket dimension. With the lessons he was giving, he had a steady stream of income to supplement his own experiments for now. Beyond that, he had a ton of resources he had gathered before landing in the Magus world. Parts of Dragor, Inferius, and other creatures, different plants from the Wizarding world, Westeros and more that he had grown, devil fruits, a philosopher's stone with several thousand souls, and more. There are enough materials to research. Although it was probably a bit early to experiment with his devil fruits and philosopher's stone, they were too unique and valuable. Any excess potion was safe in his inventory. Once he went on a long-term mission, he could find a black market and sell it there. The other acolytes that came from the Chernobyl Isles had been assigned to other areas of the academy, which meant that he rarely met them. One change to Leyland's experience in the story was that Caliwir was avoiding him out of jealousy. That meant the boy hadn't tried to invite him to participate in a mission without having the strength to be successful. Instead, he had tried to invite Basida, who had refused him once again. She already knew that she didn't have the strength for such a mission. Harry himself was different. It was true that Leyland didn't have the strength to complete the mission, nor did Caliware and his group, but Harry did. Even if he couldn't portray his real mental stats at this point, based on his own estimates and the description he knew from the original story, he guessed that his magic had at least the strength of a rank 1 magus. Destructive spells like Fiend Fire or the Killing Curse were probably of even higher rank. But at the same time, he didn't possess the same advantages that magus had. Specifically, an innate skill. Innate spells were spells that were a core part of any magus. They were naturally formed by advancing through an advanced meditation technique. They were basically more powerful spells than any other, and they cost only a fraction of the normal cost for such a spell. Many magus were using defensive spells that were always active or automatically activated. Meanwhile, Harry had to use such spells himself and pay the full price in mana costs. Whether he could beat a rank 1 magus depended on many factors, and he lacked the data yet to safely determine. But he could, with 100% certainty, say that he was on the level of a rank 1 magus, strength-wise. Which was worlds more powerful than a rank 3 acolyte, who these missions were made for. So he fell into a cycle of meditating, assisting Croft in his experiments, attending lessons, giving lessons, his own potion experiments, and the occasional mission from time to time to gather even more magic crystals and contribution points. Of course, he only went on missions that were about collecting something. People would simply consider him very lucky that he was succeeding on these missions without encountering a monster. The monster parts are just additional resources for his own experiments and studies. And he had encountered a lot of them. After all, he goes out of his way each time to explore the surrounding areas. His presence had different effects on the world beyond Caliware and Jaden's rivalry, including him. Some said that he had no idea what had caused it. One of them is Bicky. In the original storyline, her training would go very slowly compared to her actual level of talent. She would remain a rank 1 acolyte for too long because she would simp for Fail and actually gift him her stuff. But this time around, she had already reached the level of a rank 2 acolyte. Originally, by the time Leyland showed his first successful potion to the public, she was still a rank 1 acolyte. That had been almost half a year after he had started in the academy. Harry chose to show his first successful potion brewing only after 2 months to his professor. Slightly slower than Merlin, but definitely at the level of a genius. His main concern was that he could sell the potions on the market. For example, the ingredients for brewing 10 times a strength potion cost 1 magic crystal. He could sell one of them for 4 magic crystals. As long as he pretended his success rate was 10%, he would already make a profit and could use the remaining ingredients for his own experiments. His average success rate is over 80%, depending on the quality of the ingredients. The potions in his inventory were gathering up. Allowing him to experiment a lot will further expand his database. Thanks to his experiences as a university student and the memories of Leyland he had stolen, who had a scientific background before reincarnating, he approached his experiments in a systematic and scientific manner, granting him optimal results. One thing became clear quickly: the potion ingredients in the Magus world are more volatile than the ones from the Wizarding world. Too many, even smaller, mistakes, and the potion becomes unusable. That's why there are so few Pody 1ers. Without an AI chip, one would dedicate the majority of his time to Pody 1ering, which is extremely profitable. Wow, Harry, it's so impressive that you already succeeded in brewing your first potion. Bicky gushed when she had invited him to eat some food in the premium dining hall of the academy, where one had to pay for the food in order to celebrate his successful brewing. Thanks, but you seem to be doing well for yourself. You already became a rank 2 acolyte. Harry nodded apropos, making the green-haired girl blush. It's all because you have encouraged me to work hard. My family is pleased that I reached a speed above average for my talent. Bicky replied. Now that he thought about it, Harry remembered that Bicky tried to give her some of her resources a while ago, but he had refused and told her she should use them for herself. Neither did he hear anything about Fail being a genius around the academy. Just an average grade 4 acolyte. It seems like Bicky's family has some good things, even though they no longer have an Acuttle Magus in the family. Just a rank 3 acolyte. If he recruits Bicky, he could gain access to her family connections and resources. I should also reach rank 2 soon. Harry mentioned that he kept meditating every day but had to lessen his Acuttle speed to not look suspicious, or he would have reached the rank weeks ago. Somehow his talent was beyond grade 5, or there was another reason. That's impressive, even for someone of your talent, you are really fast. Bicky genuinely exclaimed. Professor Croft was really pleased with all his students. Even Basita had already reached the level of an actual rank 1 acolyte, her speed comparable to a grade 3 talent instead of a grade 2 one. Chapter 64. Harry opened his eyes just to directly look into Basita's face, who was staring at him. "Did you just advance?" she asked him with curiosity from her bedside. She wore barely anything, and Harry had a good view of her white skin. Basita made a lot of effort to seduce him, she was like a shyer version of lust. But Harry resisted the temptation, for now. While technically they were the same age, both of them were 16, he should soon be 17 if he got his age right. World travel makes it confusing, but it still didn't feel right. Mentally, he was over 30, and while many of these worlds had no problems with the age of consent and stuff like that, Harry had his own morality. Even if his situation was unique and girls were throwing themselves at him, he would at least wait till they were 18. He also missed Skagos. He still had no idea when he was able to return. But he needed to become a rank 1 magus, at least. That he was certain of. "Yes, I became a rank 2 acolyte tonight." Harry nodded as he closed his eyes again to feel the changes in his body. His sea of consciousness, or mindscape, had become more solid, it actually felt more like his magical core. On the other hand, his magical core had somehow also become more accessible to him, it was as if he could look into both of them now. He could never do that before. According to the AI chip, the data from his own advancement should be enough to display his own stats fully. "Display my stats, please." Harry Potter, rank 2 acolyte, strength, 7.5, agility, 6.7, vitality, 7.0, spiritual force, 4.3, 223, magic power, 227, status, healthy. His physical stats had been growing slowly over the past months, but the rate had become slower. He only gained such an effect thanks to a perfected Grand Knight training technique that the AI chip had created for him from the different Knight techniques he had stolen through mind reading. But he was reaching the limit he could reach as an elvish/human hybrid. He was already firmly in the range of superhuman strength. He no longer had a gamer system that could forcefully push him beyond that limit. The best Grand Knight's technique allowed the human body to reach a level of what was considered peak human in his past world up to superhuman. The truly interesting part was his spiritual force and magic power. He wasn't just on the level of a rank 1 magus, but firmly in the range of a rank 2 magus. Sure, he was missing the innate abilities of a magus and didn't have the ability to materialize his spiritual force to make his spells even stronger than a rank 2 magus could. But in the quantity of spiritual force and magic power, he had reached a level beyond one. It just had the quality of a rank 2 acolyte. Simply explained, he could cast the same spells as a magus, he just had to use more magic power. "Any guesses why I am that way?" he asked the AI chip. Beep. Analysis complete. The structure of your magical core is the same as your sea of consciousness. It is an extension of a wizard's mind. Your intelligence stat affected the quantity of your spiritual force in a ratio of 1 to 20. While your wisdom stat is responsible for your natural talent, among other things, thanks to the unnatural properties of that gamer system, they have reached a level that shouldn't be possible. Oh, so my magic power seems to be the addition of both my magical cores. The regular one in my mind was formed by practicing a magus meditation technique, while the other was a natural one. Wait, if I have two of them, can I use two different meditation techniques? This was an important question. Wizards didn't have meditation techniques and never trained their magical core, they relied on their natural growth. But if they were the same as the sea of consciousness, a magus created with a meditation technique, he should be able to train it too. Simulation complete. Affirmative. The host is able to train in two different mediation techniques at once. That was broken. If wizardkind had developed meditation techniques or somehow traveled to the magus world, they would be unbeatable on the same level. They would have twice the amount of magic power as a regular magus and twice the amount of innate spells. As soon as he was back, he needed to find a way to the wizarding world. Wait, the Starks are descendants of Sirius. Their magical core just isn't developed enough anymore. But it is there. This was all just something he had to remember for the future. Right now, he feels much safer. He was not unbeatable, but he belonged to the elite on the south coast. The strength of a rank 2 magus was enough to lead a mid-grade organization, the only ones stronger were the handful rank 3 magus ruling the south coast. His advancement to rank 2 acolyte granted him officially the ability to learn spells. Of course he could have done that before, but he didn't want to show that ability off. While wizards were chaotic and erratic in their approach to magic, going after the principle of creating spells only if they needed something, magus were the opposite. Their approach to magic was very systematic and scientific. So were their spellings. Instead of wand movements, incantations, mental images, and stuff like that, magus used spell models. A systematic blueprint for a spell considers all kinds of factors, from materials needed to more magical factors. Like the official magus ranking, spells were ranked similarly. Spells started with rank 0. An acolyte could only use rank 0 spells, the most simple and weakest kind of spell model. Rank 1 spells and higher had greater requirements. Based on how he had categorized his wizarding spells, he was certain he could at least use rank 1 spells. In fact, some of his more powerful spells reached the level of rank 2, maybe even rank 3. And he was talking here about things like Fiend Fire and the Killing Curse. Unfortunately, he was unable to test that hypothesis right now. Like Grind Water, rank 1 spell models were restricted because they were one of the requirements to reach the rank of an official magus. Without leaving the academy for a longer time, he had no way to gain his hands on a rank 1 spell model. But he could buy rank 0 spell models. With his steady stream of income through his potions, he was able to afford new spell models regularly until he had all of them. With the AI chip, his knowledge from the wizarding world, the knowledge he had gained in the Gate of Truth, and the ancient language, he managed to create a multitude of spell models. Every bit of downtime his AI chip had was spent creating new spell models, and it included all kinds of ranks from 0 to 3. While rank 1 spellings were quite common amongst the established families and organizations on the south coast, ranks 2 and 3 were strictly guarded secrets of the most powerful organizations. If he had the strength to back it up, he could sell them to earn a bit of fortune. But it was too early for that. While he could survive, he didn't have the strength to stand against any organization himself. He needed to get stronger and meet more people. Then he could afford the resources to search for a way home. A few months later. Mission area of the Abyssal Bone Forest Academy. What is he doing here? Caliware gritted out the moment he saw Harry. You agreed I could bring 2 friends of mine. Basida replied innocently, as she stood beside Harry and Bicky. Here they are. But Caliware got interrupted. Hello, it's nice to meet you, Harry. A green-haired girl greeted him excitedly. Hello. Miss. Oh, I am Lilith. The girl introduced herself. And I am Neela. It's nice to meet you, Sir Harry. A red-haired girl greeted him with an excited glint in her eyes before she turned towards Caliware and his partner Rainer and asked, Why didn't you mention you knew Harry Potter? An even greater genius than the potion genius Merlin. Rainer, a member of the Caliware clique, was also an acolyte from the Chernobyl Isles who had traveled with them to the south coast. He looked bored by the whole exchange. Caliware, on the other hand, had a massive scowl on his face. He wasn't supposed to come. Good old Caliware is a bit jealous. We are actually from the same region. Harry answered instead with a chuckle, but why are you so excited to meet me? My family is invested in many businesses around the Poolfield Kingdom. Ideally, I could recruit you to my family, but even a business partnership would be profitable. Neil explained. While I am not interested in joining a family at the moment, I am always open to business relations. Let's discuss this after the mission. Harry offered that Neil was actually the reason why he bothered to appear here. She helped Leyland sell a lot of his potions, in a one-time deal. But Harry was planning to get more connections through her. After all, he didn't plan to stay at the Abyssal Bone Forest Academy forever. Rather sooner than later, he planned to leave and find a way home. That didn't mean he wanted to lose access to many resources. Who said you could come with us? Caliware interrupted with a hateful look in his eyes. That dude has a serious inferiority complex. Well, if I am honest, I would prefer to have Harry with us. Lilith injected nervously. Me too, I heard he was already going on missions by himself. While many call him lucky, there has to be more to it. Agreed Neil, with a flirty grin towards Harry. We would be too few people without him. Added Rainer, I don't think his 2 friends would join us without him. Although I am quite impressed that you are already rank 2 Basida, he said while he was looking at Basida and Bicky. Basida reached rank 2 a few days ago. Harry had even helped her learn a few spell models by implanting the knowledge directly into her head. I got quite lucky. Basida chuckled while glancing at Harry. Which wasn't exaggerated. Part of it was because she was basically playing pay to win. The food in the premium dining hall actually helps with meditation and training. Harry had a steady income from his poti wondering, and since he was pretending that his success rate was actually rising recently, he could sell more potions. Additionally, Basita had also started poti wondering, and while she had some minor successes thanks to Harry helping her a bit, she was selling part of Harry's stock too. Which made people consider her a little talented herself. And Harry was regularly completing missions, earning more magic crystals and contribution points, which allowed them to regularly eat in the premium dining hall. But there was another reason, too. Harry's experiments didn't end with spell models and potions, he was studying different fields. The AI chip is bound directly to his soul, and its processing speed and power are directly related to Harry's spiritual force. With spiritual force on the level of a rank 3 magus, the AI chip is on a similar level, allowing Harry to research all kinds of things at a speed far beyond that of an acolyte. In fact, Harry was slowly running out of things to research. The knowledge available to athletes in the academy was limited, even if they paid for it. He was keeping it up by stealing exclusive knowledge from other acolytes' minds that they got from their professors. But there was also a limit to what acolytes got. And he wasn't confident in breaking into the mind of rank 1 magus without noticing. Soon he would be good enough to break into the minds of acolytes with protective artifacts, but in the whole Abyssal Bone Forest Academy, he had only located 7 of them. All of them come from powerful families. They would be a treasure trove, but after that, his research would run out. There was simply research he couldn't do in the academy because he didn't want to get discovered. Anyway, he had also created a spell formation that allows one to cultivate faster on the level of an acolyte. He just had to power it with his magic, and the speed was raised by about 10%. Considering that it required the magic power equal to a rank 2 magus and only a handful of acolytes could use it at once, it was an extremely luxurious treatment that Basita enjoyed for her own training. He was even working on himself too. He was getting close to rank 3 acolyte. Fine. You can come too. Caliwir finally relented, unwilling but overruled. Chapter 65. Caliwir, Strength, 2.6, Agility, 2.8, Vitality, 3.1, Spiritual Force, 4.1. Rainer, Strength, 1.8, Agility, 1.9, Vitality, 2.5, Spiritual Force, 3.7. Les, Strength, 1.9, Agility, 2.5, Vitality, 2.4, Spiritual Force, 4.3. Neela, Strength, 2.7, Agility, 3.4, Vitality, 2.9, Spiritual Force, 4.6. His powerful spiritual force was enhancing all aspects of himself. In front of his enhanced senses, they were like open books to him. An acolyte could hide nothing from him. With one glance, he could see through their current strength level. Which was not bad. Neela was actually the strongest after him. Vicky, Strength, 2.4, Agility, 2.9, Vitality, 2.8, Spiritual Force, 5.4. Basita, Strength, 2.3, Agility, 2.1, Vitality, 2.4, Spiritual Force, 3.6. Both Basita and Vicky weren't doing too badly themselves. Basita is just a freshly advanced rank 2 acolyte, and Vicky had advanced a while ago. Well, in comparison to him, they were nothing. But he was basically cheating. Harry Potter, rank 2 acolyte, Strength, 7.6, Agility, 6.7, Vitality, 7.1, Spiritual Force, 6.4, 223, Magic Power, 229, Status, Healthy. Even without him, they should be strong enough to complete a patrol mission. With him, it was overkill. But what was going on was a mission, in exchange for the connections Neela could bring him. Obviously, Caliwir decided to be the leader of the mission and gave Harry challenging looks as they accepted the mission at the counter, and he started to announce the plan. Too tired for such a childish comparison, Harry just listened, unbothered by it. Their mission was to patrol the southwestern area of the Abyssal Bone Forest around the academy. Recently, there has been an increase in the population of red-eyed roosts for an unknown reason. Well-known reason for most members of the academy. Harry already knew about it. War. Why was there a war coming? Did they discover some rare resources or treasures under the control of the Abyssal Bone Forest Academy? No. There is nothing like that at all. Their honored principal, Siley, just has a bad and provocative mouth. He recently insulted the principal of Sage Gotham's hut, the other academy that was close to theirs. In the background, Sage Gotham's hut and Whitewood's castle, whose principal also hates Siley, have allied themselves. This was simply the first wave, making the surroundings of the Abyssal Bone Forest Academy more deadly for their acolytes. While a war was deadly for weaklings, for someone strong and smart enough, it could be very profitable. And it is true that for average acolytes, even a simple patrolling mission has become quite dangerous. But for Harry, it was a walk in the park. Instead, he used the chance to collect more creative materials and plants he found in the area that he could use for his own experiments. When Harry went on missions himself, he usually didn't pick a patrolling mission. They just took too long because they were required to spend a certain amount of time patrolling. His favorite mission category was gathering or hunting missions. With his Point Me spell, they were so easy to complete, and he could take multiple of them at once and complete them in the same day. While one hunting or gathering mission paid less than one patrol mission, they were far more efficient and faster. A few days later, they were still patrolling their assigned area. Harry had been bored since the first day. He occupied himself by creating new spell models based on his knowledge of different worlds. However, after crafting the millionth variation of a fireball spell drawing from magical theory from the wizarding world or the ancient language of Alagagia, it ceased to provide any new insights. To gather more data for his database, he needed to perform experiments, which was not possible in the middle of a mission. His AI chip continuously ran millions of simulations, generating different spell models based on various pieces of knowledge and adding new simulations based on these new models to the queue. It was an infinite cycle of combining different magic systems. However, there was a limit to how much new knowledge this process could yield. With this last one, we should have killed enough of these red-eyed ravens. Caliware said as he collected the claws of another one of these ravens, should we turn in the mission? Obviously. The forest is just too dangerous. It's been days since any one of us could sleep properly well, besides Harry. I have no idea how you can sleep so carefree, but be awake the moment anything dangerous is so close. Neela exclaimed. All the other acolytes nodded, even Basita and Bicky, who were the whole time protected by him when there had been any danger. Yes, let's return. Harry agreed, ignoring the implied question. But the trip home wouldn't be that simple. These red-eyed ravens had become rather aggressive, and larger flocks began to attack them. Harry made sure that his fellow acolytes would experience the danger of the situation while at the same time interfering secretly so they wouldn't be in real danger. Of course, he often saved Neela or Lilith from some ravens once he let them come close. Building up a bit of goodwill was always useful. The true danger for the regular acolytes started later. They run into a hallucination trap caused by a mushroom breed that wasn't native to the area. These mushrooms were human-sized and purple-colored, reminding him of a human in pain, called spider-faced mushrooms. Obviously, he wasn't affected by them. While the hallucinogenic gases emanated by these mushrooms would still affect him, he had always placed wards on himself to prevent poisons and gases from affecting him. But it was interesting to watch the other acolytes react to dangers that weren't really there. He, of course, was recording and analyzing the effect and realized that they were all seeing the same thing. It seems that the gas was a bit more mystical than scientific. When the situation seemed too desperate for the hallucinating acolytes, Caliware spoke up, "We have no other choice. This is beyond our level, let's split up and run. Hopefully we will meet in the academy." Caliware used some kind of black powder to empower himself and perform a beast-like transformation. His stats have risen a lot, and he disappeared into the forest with speed beyond that of a regular knight while sparring a last glance at Harry. Harry had to grin. He is right. It's best if we all split up and use our own way. Each of the acolytes had their own method for escaping. Harry made sure that each Basita and Bicky had some potions he had created with them. Harry already told the two of them that they should escape on their own if things went bad. They would only hinder him. And so they did. Rainer, Neela, and Lilith did the very same. Even Harry pretended to escape, not using his real speed. There was no danger after all. He stopped on a forest clearing as he felt someone was following him. "Caliware, what are you doing here?" Harry wondered. "Just using a perfect opportunity to remove an eyesore. Nobody will think it strange if you disappear." Caliware grinned as he still in his beast form appeared in the clearing and suddenly moved to attack using claws that his hands turned into to try to rip his heart out. A regular knight would have actually died while facing such strength. But Harry had the strength of a peak Grand Knight. He caught the incoming claw in a firm grip, breaking Callaway's hand from the pressure. I was wondering what you were planning by marking me, Harry said, his voice now cold. Callaway had marked Harry with some kind of powder while he had watched during the night. You knew? The opposing acolyte gritted out in pain. Yep, originally I was planning to capture you once I knew what you were planning. But a petty wimp like you deserves death, Harry said as his eyes glowed dangerously green. There had been something he needed to confirm for a while now. A black ball of flame flew from the palm of his hand, hitting Callaway directly in the chest. It was just a small ball, barely palm-sized. But as soon as it hit the acolyte, he was completely engulfed by black flames, and he began to scream in agony. The smell of burning flesh entered Harry's nose as he stoically watched Callaway burn. It smelled like pork. Nothing remained of Callaway. Even the ashes had disappeared. Callaway never stood a chance. And suddenly, Harry threw up. He had killed someone in cold blood. Yes, he had killed a lot before. The Skagosi, bandits, alchemists, wildlings, beasts, monsters, undead, and so on. Never before had he actually felt death. Gamer's mind had taken care of the backlash for him. He no longer had it. Harry Potter was still a human, not a cold machine. A human is stuck in a very cold and cruel world. He needed to kill the modern human in him and adjust to this world. That is the reason Callaway needed to die. Originally, he planned to capture him and use him for research once he was out of the academy. Keeping an acolyte transfigured in his inventory for a few years was easy, but he just needed to adjust to killing. Objectively, he knew he had killed before. It wasn't the same. Callaway had been useful, at least for once. It's no use. He must have run into some kind of danger while under the hallucination. Neela said they hadn't found Callaway for a while. She is right. Vicky nodded. It's getting too dangerous out here. Let's report to the academy. Maybe they will send someone out to look for him. Which was highly unlikely, but Raynor nodded while glancing at Harry with suspicion, seems to be for the best. Harry realized that Raynor seemed to be aware of what Callaway had been planning. Well, if he were smart, he would remain silent. After taking care of Callaway and calming down, Harry searched for the others and freed them from the effects of the hallucination. They were in quiet, compromising positions and could have died if they didn't get help from Harry. Once they returned to the academy, they instantly headed to the mission area to hand in their completed mission. Of course, they also reported the death of Callaway and the escalating danger around the academy. That something was wrong had already been noticed by the academy. They were not the only ones that had run into trouble, many acolytes seemed to have failed their mission and sustained heavy injuries. A new emergency mission has been posted. Discover the origin of the abnormalities and dangers around the academy. Reward: 500 magic crystals, high-grade information on 3 topics of your choice, or an improved spell model. Note: this mission is categorized as extremely dangerous. Exercise caution when accepting. While the reward was quite high for one mission, Harry had no idea how he should reasonably complete that mission, even though he knew what the cause of it was. It probably weren't the acolytes that were placing the dangers in the Abyssal Bone Forest Academy. Capturing an official magus would just blow his cover. There was no reasonable explanation he could give. This would just mean he had to leave the academy for 500 magic crystals and some information that he most likely wouldn't even get. It wasn't worth it. Especially since he still could get more in the academy. It was time to crack the minds of the rich acolytes and see whether they really possessed advanced meditation techniques. And there was something else he had to take care of too. You didn't tell me your room number yet, Neela whispered as she snuck close to him, her bouncy breast hugging his arm. I have no problem showing you my room and agreeing on a deal. I actually have a good offer for you. But I have no interest in sleeping around. I am greedy, and I don't share. Harry replied, looking directly into her eyes. He was mentally too old to be affected by a tease, and lust had built up a healthy resistance in him. Chapter 66. The Abyssal Bone Forest Academy is only a smaller faction, and while it was more powerful than the many small families, even the ones with a magus backing them, it remained a rather rural faction on the south coast. There was a distinct hierarchy of power on the south coast. At the bottom were the independent acolytes. They often had no real territories, just some mansions and houses here and there. After that came the organized families with multiple acolytes. They had very small territories but belonged to a bigger faction. For example, Vicky's Taylor family was such a faction under the Abyssal Bone Forest Academy. Families with a magus backing them came above that, though there were massive differences between them too. Some just had a magus that gained grind water and advanced but managed to stay independent. They were similar to the acolyte families, belonging to a bigger family. At the peak of that level were families that owned advanced meditation techniques, the true backbone of any bigger organization. Examples of this were the Lily-Tells, the Lily-Els, and the Redbuds. The three main families support the Abyssal Bone Forest Academy. Above this stood the different organizations, for example, an academy. They were made up of a combination of the different lower-ranked factions. There was simply power in working together. Of course, these larger factions, like the Abyssal Bone Forest Academy, had different levels of power too. To actually be able to hold a territory that could be split up amongst the many smaller factions that were part of an organization, one needed at least a rank 2 magus. For the Abyssal Bone Forest Academy, this was the principal, Siley. And even then, this only qualified the academy as a mid-ranked faction. A high-ranked faction on the south coast had multiple rank 2 magus backing them. And lastly, at the peak, the de facto leaders of the south coast, which was split into two territories, light and dark, were the rank 3 magus. Every smaller faction was basically under their influence and followed their command in the larger picture. While these factions were independent, they would still obey and work together under the rank of magus. For example, if the light and dark sides went to war against each other. What kind of faction was Neela part of? Well, her Welter family was backed by a rank 1 magus, but only one that had used grind water to advance. He wasn't under a contract for another family because he had acquired grind water during special circumstances in the past. But of course, they were part of the Abyssal Bone Forest territory, focusing on trade and business. While their main focus was spread out in the Poolfield Kingdom, they also had connections within other territories. Exactly the influence Harry needed. The Poolfield Kingdom was a kingdom under the control of the Abyssal Bone Forest Academy. To be precise, if you considered the Academy to be at the center, then the Death Sea between the south coast and the Chernobyl Isles lay to the south. To the north were the mountain plains of Death, a deadly region even for a rank 1 magus. To the west was their border with Sage Gotham's Hut, another organization at their level. Lastly, to the east was the Poolfield Kingdom. Magus didn't seem to be very creative when it came to naming things sometimes. Every time something was dangerous, it contained death in its name. Whoa, danger, let's call it Death Place. Whoa, it's so big. I never seen one so big. Neela exclaimed with wide eyes. It's just a room. Harry replied, well, I may have gotten a bit of preferential treatment because of my talent, but you are a grade 4 talent yourself and have some backing. Shouldn't yours be similar? I have similar furniture, but it's no way that big. Probably because I share with Basita. He added. Lucky girl, anyway, you said you have an offer for me? You sure don't want to have some fun? We could play a lot together. Neela replied teasingly. Not for now. I already told you I am greedy, and I don't share. If I make you mine, you remain mine. Harry replied honestly, that was how he felt. Was it unfair and selfish? Yes. Did he care? No, he doesn't force himself on anyone. Yet. We will see. Neela replied non-committingly, so what is the offer you have for me? Are you interested in joining my family as an alchemist? We can even provide you with grind water and a spell model once you need to advance. Nice offer, but how about you sign this first? Harry said as he pulled out a piece of paper that he had prepared before. What is this? A non-disclosure agreement. You won't share what we talk about with anyone. This contract can't be broken. It will literally render you unable to say what we will discuss in the next hour. Harry explained that if she didn't accept, he would just wipe her mind of this discussion and be done with it. Is it like a contract under the Trial's Eye? How did you get one of them as an acolyte? She asked with astonishment. The universe of Warlock of the Magus world was quite big and powerful. Harry's current true strength was around rank 2, and his official strength was rank 0 as an acolyte based on the ranking system used by Magus. Meanwhile, the Trial's Eye was an ancient being, also falling into the very same ranking the Magus used. But it was a rank 8 existence, a being of multiple conceptual laws. How powerful it was in comparison to other worlds was hard to tell. But laws were on a conceptual level that could be really broken. The trials I has mastered the laws of trial and contract and was basically offering something similar to his contracts. Just with the difference that Harry's contracts were on a higher level. Though it also watched over spoken vows, if one were to invoke their names, they are not as binding as a written contract. Similar concept. But this one can't be broken, even by the trials I himself. Harry replied, read it. It will exactly do what it says. I would sign it. You won't regret it. Neela looked at him seriously. His statement was unbelievable. A contract that couldn't be broken? Even by a higher level magus? She still didn't understand him and read through the contract. Harry gained nothing from lying to her. There was no need to trap her, he wouldn't gain anything. Even if this was a contract under the trial's eyes, the terms were absolute. If this wasn't, but the contract was as powerful as he said, why go through the effort to trick an acolyte? In the end, she signed it. Her gut told her she should take the gamble. There. I signed it. So what is this all about? First try to lie. The contract clearly states that we can't lie to each other for the next hour. My hair is B. Her eyes widened. She couldn't finish the sentence. Something was stopping the words from coming out. See, it's real. He grinned. So, Neela, I am planning to create an organization under me. Right now, I only have one other person in this world besides myself who is part of it. Another one I am considering recruiting. How about you join me too? I could really use the connections your Welter family brings to start out. You are just a rank 2 acolyte. You may be a genius, even a genius alchemist. But even then, right now, you have nothing that you could bring to the table beyond a few potions. She replied in disbelief. You may see me as a rank 2 acolyte. But my real strength is already at the level of a rank 2 official magus. I am strong enough to support an organization like Abyssal Bone Forest Academy. I will tell you more about it if you agree. If not, you won't be able to share that information. Harry replied unbothered, as for what I offer you, besides my backing, do you really want to use Grine Water to try to advance to the level of an official magus? Are you aware of the prize? You won't get older than a regular acolyte, even if you are more powerful. And what other choice? Wait, you mean to tell me you have an advanced meditation technique? She asked in shock. I have a few rank 1 ones. His mastery over legilimency had become good enough to enter the minds of the acolytes belonging to the different, more powerful families. They only had the first level, it seems like the families were careful enough not to share the second level if they had one. I know the location of a rank 4 meditation technique. In the future, I will get more of them. I guarantee you, I will get you one that will make you stronger than anyone on the south coast right now. Is the contract also working on you? She asked, disbelieving. Yes, it is. It is hard to prove, since you can't be certain whether I am acting if I lie, but it is. Harry chuckled. So what are you saying, Neela? Do you want to reach beyond your current world? She did. A potion formula to increase your spiritual force. Croft raised an eyebrow as Harry had come to his with that request. Are you sure you need it? You are already exceptionally fast, even for your level of talent, and you should be aware that any potion leaves residue in your body, making the path ahead harder. Harry already knew that, but Croft wasn't finished yet. Also, the success rate for these kinds of potions is too low. And the necessary ingredients are far too expensive. Many of them have died out for thousands of years or have become very rare. A lot of magus families have bankrupted themselves trying to get such potions. Without a doubt, Harry was a genius. But Croft still had the opinion that he was trying to bite off more than he should. Professor, I know the chances of completing such a potion are low, but if I don't try, I will never know it. Also, it is a valuable learning experience, even if I don't succeed. And a younger acolyte has a higher chance of becoming a magus. I would like to take the gamble. Harry replied, though he knew he would succeed. He already knew a substitute ingredient for one of the potions that the original MC had used. It was actually pretty common in the Poolfield Kingdom, all he needed was the recipe. Harry had no need for such a potion, his talent and supportive magic were enough to not land in the bottleneck most other acolytes were having. Commonly, acolytes had 2 bottlenecks the whole time while being rank 2 acolytes because they would build up a too high resistance to the elementary meditation technique for it to be effective. And one at the peak of rank 3 acolyte, which was because the elementary meditation technique couldn't break into the level of a magus. These bottlenecks didn't really affect Harry, he could just use the spiritual force inside his magical core to train his sea of consciousness. It was a crude but effective way, and it didn't cause any lasting damage since it was his own spiritual force. But for his subordinates, it was a different matter. Since he was planning to create an organization to aid him in his goals, he needed qualified personnel he could trust. Neela has been a rank 2 acolyte for a while, and Basita felt the full force of that bottleneck. Such potions would make it easier to train up his core power. After all, in what kind of organization would the leader do everything because his people were too weak? They would also help a lot once he completed his immediate big goal and found a way home. No way, he wouldn't train more Magus on Skagos. It was a path that could train beings at least up to planet level, someone able to destroy or create a planet, and that was only his rough estimate based on feats he had read in the original novel. A lot of the later chapters had become conceptual and theoretical about nature, so it wasn't exactly clear if Leyland had become someone who could affect whole universes or even more. But in the last chapter, he could devour a whole planet. Earth, to be precise, where he killed his past self. Sigh. The student is just like the master. Croft sighed. I have a few formulas, but because of contracts binding me, I am unable to share them with you. As for my personal formulas, you won't be able to afford them. Doubt. Neela allowed me to make a ton of magic crystals by selling my massive stock of potion, but of course I can't explain where I got them from. And I still need to return to the academy in the future. Harry sighed eternally while asking, how much do they cost? 5,000 magic crystals, and just because you are my student. Croft replied honestly. And he wasn't exaggerating. Potions that could help bypass the bottlenecks were valuable. Often, they were well-guarded family secrets. Is there really no other way? Each such recipe requires a potion master to research for several years. The price I offered you is very low. Croft explained patiently, but there is another way. That's what Harry had been speculating about. What is it, Professor? While I am unable to give you my personal formulas cheaply, I had a similar idea during my youth and collected several formulas from ancient magi. Croft said carefully. The ancient magi. Magi in ancient times had reached the peak of Magus culture, they had founded an empire that spans amongst millions of worlds in this universe, the Byron Empire. But for some reason, it suddenly collapsed overnight. Nobody really knew why. A lot of legacies and techniques were lost. Well, on the surface. In truth, only the lower-ranking magi remained, and of course they had no idea why. But Harry knew why, he had spoilers after all. The ancient Magus had conquered the world for the world, constantly progressing and expanding for more resources and knowledge until they reached a bottleneck at rank 8. They had encountered another civilization on their level, with an equal number of rank 8 beings as themselves. If both parties gained the knowledge and resources of the other side, they could break into rank 9 themselves. And so war broke out. A devastating one spanning across worlds until the other civilization realized there was no point, and they would only wipe out each other. This civilization created a powerful barrier around their world, so the Magi could never pass through it in force. Without a path forward, the ancient Byron Empire split into their own factions, eyeing each other and fighting each other. Each has their own interests. Many ancient Magi were still out there, ruling and controlling their own worlds or parts of the Magus world. They were just no longer united. But of course, a desolate small part of the formerly powerful empire, like the South Coast, was not aware of that. Peak at the South Coast was rank 3, and each rank had a massive difference in power. The difference between ranks 3 and 4 and ranks 6 and 7 was even more massive. Basically, ranks 1 to 3 are the lowest parts of the Magus world. The fodder. At rank 4, you barely qualify as an actual power, and only from rank 7 onwards do you truly become a peak power. All the powers on the South Coast combined were nothing more than ants in the larger picture. The South Coast was just in a lucky or unlucky position, they didn't matter enough for someone powerful to conquer them. It simply wasn't a rich region. Yes, the Magi were most prosperous back then. But unfortunately, it disappeared overnight. Many of the ingredients from back then don't exist anymore. But some of their knowledge remains, like a few formulas I managed to collect. Croft sighed. So you have formulas for which the necessary ingredients don't exist anymore. Harry realized. Perceptive, like always. Their effects are powerful, but without the ingredients, it will be hard to brew them. But maybe you can use them as a base for your own formulas or find a substitute ingredient. Still, you should know how much work this is, and there is no way to tell if you will succeed. Croft warned him. But Harry knew he would. I have a feeling that I will manage it, Professor. Harry nodded enthusiastically. It isn't just a feeling. He already knows a substitute ingredient for one of them. I am certain you will, but be warned that the success rate is extremely low. Croft said as he rummaged through his storage space, pulling a few scrolls out. Here are the formulas I collected. These scrolls were very old, but they were made out of an unknown material that still kept them readable. Harry read through the different ingredient lists and names in order to find the ones he was looking for. And, of course, to record the ingredients. While Croft concealed the actual recipes, with the right ingredients, it may be possible to reverse engineer some of the formulas without paying for them. About 10 minutes later, he had found the two he had been looking for. I'll take these two. Tears of Mary and the Azure Potion. All right, they will cost you 150 magic stones each. Croft nodded. After paying for them, Harry asked, do you have any other such recipes? Like for healing potions, body strengthening potions, and similar. Quite greedy, are we? But in fact, I do have quite a collection of such recipes. Take a look. Croft chuckled as he pulled an even larger stack out of his storage. Harry took the opportunity to record the ingredients for all of them and bought a few of them, almost spending 1,500 magic crystals overall. He had acquired 2 healing potion recipes he felt were interesting, one purification potion that was able to lighten the damage of potion residue from the body, a constitution strengthening potion that makes the body stronger, and a few other miscellaneous potion for different purposes. Mainly, he wanted to gain a bit more references for his database in order to have an easier time creating his own potions. He would have purchased more, but it would be hard to explain how he got so much money. On his way out, he actually ran into Bicky. Oh, Harry, you are here. Chapter 67. While Bicky was becoming more and more womanly and mature, like a girl in the height of puberty would, she was also developing well as a magus. Unlike in the original story, she was actually working hard. And he wasn't sure what could have caused such a change. Was it him? Did she fall for him instead of that trashy fail? But why would she work hard? Wait, didn't she offer her family resources once to him? What did he say back then? No, thank you. I don't need them. Why are you wasting them on someone else? A hard-working and capable girl is so much more attractive than a dumb bimbo that is just good for her looks. He had ranted back then. If that had been the cause, then he wouldn't complain if she did that for him. Oh, Bicky. He greeted her with a warm smile and asked, how are you doing? It seems like you are coming along. I am working hard. But you are too. You are soon able to break into the level of a rank 3 acolyte. She noticed with bright eyes, how about it? Wanna grab something to eat? Sorry, I am busy. I am in the middle of preparations. I will be leaving the academy for a few years. Harry replied, that's why he chooses to buy so many potion formulas now. Croft has already given me and Basida permission. There was simply nothing to gain for him by staying here and waiting for the war to start. The next opportunity he wanted to use, according to the canon timeline, was at the end of the war with Sage Gotham's hut. But he had to make several preparations until then and didn't want to stagnate in the academy, which had nothing of interest for him. The speed at which Leyland used to grow was simply too slow. Interesting would only be knowledge that was restricted to magi. Unfortunately, he wasn't confident enough that he could break into the mind of an official magus without being noticed. He simply lacked the data on what is different between the minds of a magus and an acolyte. And he lacked research subjects that he could capture here to make his own research. Otherwise, it was too risky. In the outside world, he could do so much more. You are leaving? Bicky asked, shocked. Yes. Then he whispered into her ear, you have seen how it is out there. A war is coming. Staying here as an acolyte is too much of a risk. Her eyes widened. Are you sure? I didn't see many leave yet. They haven't realized it yet. You should get leave too. While they will try to save the talents of their academy by sending them on missions as soon as the confirmation comes, the lower-ranked academy will have to remain here. Better leave now while you can. Bicky bit her lips. But where should I go? I don't think my family would appreciate me leaving the academy and staying with them. You could come with us. Basida, Neela, and I are planning to take a long-term mission together. You can join us. Harry replied that any acolyte could leave the academy while not being ordered differently, as long as they had a mission. There was no limit on how many people took a mission together. At some point, it wasn't just worth it because the reward remained the same. Really? As Harry nodded, her face lit up. I will ask the professor for permission. Let's talk about the details later. Harry. A voice from behind him called out as he was leaving the trading post. He had used as much of his funds as possible to stock up on as many raw materials as possible. Basita and Neela were doing the same for him. He turned around and saw Gurika had called out to him, one of the less talented acolytes that had come with him to the academy from the Chernobyl Isles. The young boy was still a rank 1 acolyte. Harry had wondered whether this would happen. After all, his existence had changed quite a few things already. What's up, Gurika? Been a while. Harry greeted the 12-year-old boy. We definitely have a problem. Could you come with me for a moment? Gurika asked. Gurika, Dodoria, and Nissa have usually been looked down on by Kaliwir and Jaden, including their cliques, which had cowed them in the past. They rarely hung out with anyone else from the Chernobyl Isles. Sure. Harry said, already having guessed what was happening. The fate of an acolyte who had gotten a bad professor. Nissa was the one with really bad luck. While Dodoria and Gurika didn't get good ones, they weren't experimented on very badly. But the small, blonde-haired girl who was once Nissa had gotten the worst kind of professor. As soon as they arrived in Gurika's dorm room, Harry could already smell the result of the worst kind of human experimentation. It stunk. Nissa had been a cute 11-year-old girl. Nothing of that remained anymore. Her fingers were purple and thick like carrots, and her skin was scarred and oozing disgust. Scars littered her face, with visible signs of stitches. She had the snout of a pig, a bald head, and a missing ear. Her coarsely spaced teeth were prominent, and a thick, repulsive yellow fluid continuously flowed from her mouth. It looked as if someone had disassembled and then, haphazardly, reassembled her facial features. Are you hoping for my help to avenge you? Harry asked as the 3 low-talented acolytes that had formed their own clique looked at him. No, nothing like that. We hoped you had an idea how to help her. Dodoria was the one who replied. Well, there are a few methods. The most realistic ones for you are, first, you could become an official magus. While it is true that you have lost your looks, your body has become far more resilient. While advancing to the level of a magus, one can alter their appearance to his wishes. Harry explained, you would also keep that resistance. An official magus? I am only a rank 1 acolyte right now. Nissa's eyes flashed for a brief instant, but they dulled almost immediately. For a moment, he considered recruiting her. But it was too early. She was still too naive. Nissa was actually one of the only people from their batch of acolytes that had reached the level of a magus, but he was certain a large part came from her character growth. Harry could offer her an easy solution later, let her grow a bit and see if she gained the same willpower as her original self. Well, the other solution is to cleanse her body from the pollution and, with it, from the advantageous resistance. But this would allow her to once again reshape her body with spells. A potion that could simplify this is the Harmonious Aqua Regia potion. Still, it is expensive. Even if I were to brew it for you for cheap, the ingredients cost a small fortune. Harry replied honestly, trying to discourage them. That natural resistance she had gained would only grow stronger with higher ranks. It was like a defensive innate spell that would only make her stronger. So either become an official magus or use a small fortune. It doesn't matter, I will accomplish it. Nissa said now, determination in her eyes. It was exactly what Harry wanted to hear. Here, take this. He said, pulling a small pink potion out. How did you know? Nissa asked, bewildered. She didn't tell anyone about the problems she had at night. I just do. Let's meet again in the future. Harry said as he walked out, the 3 rank 1 acolytes staring at his back. He actually had a few more ways to help her. For example, human transmutation is powered by a philosopher's stone. But this world was extremely harsh, they had to grow or they would fail. Especially with their talents. I got it. Vicky said as she arrived in Harry's shared dorm. Professor Croft gave me permission, though he was surprised that I was asking for it. He was planning to talk to Senior Merlin soon, but not me. Recently, even Neela moved into his dorm room for some reason. Well, he knew the reason, but he endured. She was only 17 and still 1 year short of her major. Harry had the willpower to endure it when two beautiful girls were throwing themselves at him. He understood where they were coming from. The mentality to find a strong partner was common in a strong eats weak world, but he didn't plan to sleep with anyone and also ignored his own morality. What are they doing on your bed? Vicky immediately asked as she saw Basita and Neela resting on their shared bed. Since Neela had also moved into his dorm, she didn't want to get another bed. Just like Basita, she wanted to sleep beside him. Now he was sleeping with one girl on each side cuddling into him. It's also their bed. Their bed? Neela moved in too. Vicky repeated the downcast. Harry, seeing where her troubles were going, pulled her into one of the extra rooms of his dorm, which he had turned into a lab, and closed the door. We need to talk. Vicky, what do you want from me? She stared at him, not expecting that he was asking so directly. I like you. I see. Harry muttered, I am attracted to you too. Really? She asked in excitement, interrupting him. Let me finish. But so am I to Neela and Basita. They are trying the same as you. Let me be clear, I am greedy. I won't settle for a single woman. That's just not me. Harry stated it honestly. Why would he? He had a multiverse open to him. His elvish bloodline made him live very long. And he was getting stronger. Why should he settle for one girl? There were so many possibilities. On the other hand, I am also extremely selfish. I don't like to share with other men. There is no problem with other girls, but men can fuck off. What mine is, remains mine. Harry explained, looking directly into Vicky's eyes. If you really want to be with me and like me, then you will have to accept that simple fact. We can work from here on out. But I want to be upfront in that regard. I have no problem with that. I won't lose, but I can accept sharing with you. If you will have me. Vicky replied that there was a strange confidence in her eyes. Okay, we can try too. I came to a similar arrangement with Neela and Basita. Just be aware that I won't have sex with you until you are at least 18. That's enough time to develop a meaningful connection. Until then, we can break off our arrangement at any time. Vicky nodded, a small blush forming on her beautiful face. Damn, hormones. Stupid body in the middle of puberty. Being a gamer had been so much easier, but now he was acting more irrational and teenage-like. Emotions are a fickle thing. Now he would have to tell Vicky about founding an organization too. But that could wait until they were out of the academy. After all, even Vicky had permission to take on a long-term mission. Neela had gotten it thanks to her backing from her own professor, and Basita had gotten it with him. Now they just had to talk to the mission counter and get a mission. Of course, Harry already knew which one he wanted to get. Chapter 68. Are you sure your family won't cause any trouble? Harry asked Neela as they were gathering the majority of their things and storing them inside his inventory. It became pretty cramped at this point. One disadvantage that it no longer was powered by his old gamer system is that it no longer grew with the need for more space. It always added more inventory slots if he had filled up a row. Now he could put things in without fixed slots, but the size of the pocket dimensions remained the same. It had become cramped with all the resources they had brought. Each of the girls had also bought what they needed for their personal projects. All of them had converted the majority of their fluidity into resources. Many of the merchants and businesses have already realized what was going on and are converting their goods into magic crystals at low prices. Most of them didn't plan to stay in the academy for the war. Even the academy had lowered the prices of their own services, offering rank 0 spell models and other paid information for a much lower price, which Harry took advantage of and completed his own collection on all spell models for the acolyte rank in all elements. Many spells were based on elemental affinities. The most common ones, like light, darkness, fire, earth, water, wind, and lightning, had the highest number of spell models. But there were also more advanced elements that often were combinations of base elements like ice, lava, metal, plants, and so on. And then there were the rarest kinds of elements related to higher concepts like life, death, time, and space. They had the least number of rank 0 spell models, almost none. There were a few death-related spell models, but only because this was a field of specialization in the Abyssal Bone Forest Academy. Overall, Harry had bought the around 250 rank 0 spell models available in the academy. He didn't really need them, but they were good data for his database, based on completely different concepts than the ones he had brought from other worlds. He actually didn't need to buy the spell models since he had picked them up from the memories of other acolytes. But he wanted to record the original written verifications since the memories had varied from person to person. Magical artifacts, on the other hand, were even now not available. If you wanted one, you either got one from a professor for a high price or you got one from an acolyte specializing in the field. But the quality was often lacking, and the price wasn't worth it. While Harry could have afforded one, it would be far cheaper if he created one himself. Harry, Basida, and Neela would carry at least a bag with them once they left the academy, and they would take 2 large chests with them too. Not only for spaciousness but also as a cover so that nobody was wondering where they were keeping their things. Bicky wasn't informed about Harry's inventory yet. He didn't feel it was worth the risk to reveal it inside the academy if he could do it with fewer ears around. Each time he told Basida or Neela more about himself, he took special precautions like being in his private room, taking privacy spells, signing contracts, and so on. One thing Harry had already learned in Hogwarts was that you never knew who was listening in. No, they are eager that I became close with a podinoring genius like you and are ready to support us. They are under the assumption that I am recruiting you into our family, not that I am planning to bring them into your organization in the future. Chuckled Neela, the head has even sent me personally a message that I can offer you grind water and a spell model if I feel that it has a chance of success. That's great. Harry chuckled himself. Once Neela was ready to advance with an advanced meditation technique to the level of a rank 1 official magus, she would already be more powerful than the head of her family. The door opened as Basida and Bicky came in carrying chests. We are ready. Packed everything you need. Harry confirmed. Yes, clothes, materials, potions, magic stones, pool field currency. Bicky counted. Good, then let me enchant yours too. Harry nodded as he put the palm of his hand on the chest. The wizarding world had many useful charms for such a situation. By converting them into spell models, they had become even more efficient. Featherlight charm, unbreakable charm, and similar were good fits for such a trunk. It's so light! Bicky exclaimed as she was now able to lift the chest alone. Did you turn it into a magic artifact? No, while the charms last a while, they need to be reapplied. To qualify as a common magic artifact, the magic needs to be imbued permanently. Harry explained. Like for everything, the Magus civilization also had a categorization system for magic artifacts. Artifacts without offensive or defensive applications were just called common magic artifacts. Above them are low-grade magic artifacts. They were certain artifacts that could cause or block a certain degree of damage, in the acolyte and low-level magus range. While it was a broad categorization, other types of artifacts, even supportive ones, but with a similar level of power, fell into that category. Degree of damage was the unit used by magi to quantify the amount of damage a spell or artifact does. 1 degree is the equivalent of power released by 1 gram of magic crystal. Magic crystals were the standard currency used by magi. For their wide range of uses, they were nothing more than crystallized pure magic power. A mid-grade artifact was the range of power for artifacts from full rank 1 magus up to rank 3. Which was a pretty wide category. High-grade magic artifacts were commonly used by rank 4 to 6 magi. Above that, categorization was hard since the degree of power was no longer a really applicable concept. Artifacts created by rank 7 beings and above often fell into a conceptual nature. It seems like we are ready to leave then. Harry nodded as they gathered their things. What kind of mission do you four want? A skinny old man manning the mission counter asked. He was one of the rank 3 acolytes who had failed to advance to the level of official magus but survived the process. These people had usually signed contracts with the academy to get their hands on grind water and were now forced to complete their agreement with the academy, even though they failed. Death may have been a kinder fate, instead of spending the rest of their lives in a dead-end job watching others attempt and succeed what they had failed. We are here for a long-term mission. My name is Harry Potter. Professor Croft has given us permission. Harry requested. Once the old man had confirmed all their identities, he pulled a black-colored scroll out and said, "Take a look at this. They are recorded here." Harry used the AI chip to scan through it. There. It's here. He realized as he found the mission he had been looking for, we will pick that one. In fact, he didn't care which mission he was picking. Their payment was terrible, their true purpose was to keep the talented acolytes safe, away from the academy. But this one would make things easier since he had to go there either way. Extreme Night Town is located in the Eastwood province of Poolfield Kingdom. You will have to travel through almost half the kingdom before you reach it. Do you want to buy a map? The old man smiled like a crafty merchant. No, thank you. Neela said she already had detailed maps of the whole Poolfield Kingdom. Her family lives in the area after all. The man nodded before he pulled 4 red metal cards out. These are your exit passes. Don't lose them, they are important. Abyssal Bone Forest Academy has, thanks to the approaching war, become very strict with who can enter and leave the academy. That went faster than expected. Basida said that as they left the mission area, her exit pass was safely stored in her pocket. Yes, it's still early. We should head off directly. Harry agreed as they headed towards Harry's large dorm room, where their things were already waiting for them. They carried the 3 chests in their possession with their bags towards the highest floor. Neela had already bought a carriage with 4 sturdy black horses for them and was waiting. As soon as they had packed up, Harry and Neela sat in the front, Basida and Bicky in the back, and rode the carriage towards an elevator-like system. Your exit passes. The voice of a strict man asked from somewhere. As soon as all 4 of them showed theirs, the elevator activated, and the sound of gears could be heard. At the top, a heavy stone door opened, and they could ride out. All right, Extreme Night Town is in the eastern part of the Poolfield Kingdom. Neela has shown me her maps already. All of you should be ready. We may be attacked. Harry warned them as he activated his AI chip, and a navigation-like arrow appeared in his vision. In this regard, the AI chip is far more flexible than the gamer system. All of them took a last glance at the academy before Harry motioned for the horses to ride off. It will be a while before we see it again. Bicky muttered while the others nodded. The surroundings of the Abyssal Bone Forest Academy have become far more dangerous. Sage Gotham's hut has done a good job of planting traps all around it. But in front of the Rank 2 Mega's comparable strength of Harry, these traps were nothing. In reality, they were intended to thin out the amount of acolytes the Academy had and take care of some unprepared magi. A horde of beastmen had tried, and some other tree-like creatures had tried to stop them because they were a large group of acolytes. A lesser version of fiend fire was around their carriage, and there was nothing these mostly acolyte-level creatures could do. Harry had a ton of different spell models he could pick from. His AI chip was spending any downtime it had simulating new spell models based on his knowledge. And it was much faster than Leyland's, with a lot more knowledge back then. The amount of rank 0 spell models were in the millions, though many were repetitive and throwaway versions. He had a few 100,000 rank 1 spell models, a few thousand rank 2 spell models, and even less than 100 rank 3 spell models. Rank 3 was much harder for him to reach. Since the knowledge in his possession simply didn't have such a power level, the only wizarding spells he had that could reach the level of rank 3 were the Unforgivables, Fiend Fire, and similar spells. But once he gains some actually higher ranked spell models, these numbers will also escalate even further. This small show of power had scared off any of their possible pursuers. They were probably thinking a rank 1 Magus was in this party and didn't dare to follow. Even without pursuers, they didn't choose to stop and made good speed. It only took them 5 days to reach their first real stop in the Poolfield Kingdom, Greystone City. Chapter 69. Greystone City, or rather the whole of the Poolfield Kingdom, was a good example of what bothered Harry about the Magus world. The rift between Magi and non-Magi, especially in the technological field, in the dark Magi region of the south coast, it had a relative good reason. Magi were beings able to store, manipulate, and use different forms of energy as part of the more mystical aspects of existence. These energies are harmful to common humans. Spending more time around a regular human as a Magi, would shorten the lifespan of the human a lot. But Magi were humans in the end. More powerful ones, but still human. They needed common humans for more Magi. What they couldn't explain was the strange technological rift between normal humans and Magi. While Magi accomplished countless advanced forms of technology through their magic and utilization of mystical energies, like advanced medicine, flying ships, space travel, teleportation, and more, normal humans still lived in a similar period as the Dark Ages of Europe. Even on the light side of the south coast, it wasn't much different. Common humans and light Magi lived side by side, thanks to an advanced application of magical technology that neutralized the harmful influences of Magi on regular humans. They weren't any more advanced than on the dark side, mostly resorting to medieval farming and mining for their lives. To Harry, this was a complete mystery that put many big questions in his mind. Especially why? Why would a magical civilization that had such a systematic and scientific approach waste so many resources? Even if the personal strength of regular humans was much lower than that of Magus, with the right tools, they could still kill some. Modern armaments and explosive, according to Harry's estimates, reach a similar level to the ones of ophical magi. And they were much cheaper to produce. Sure, it needed an armed and well-prepared squad of regular humans to kill a magus, but they were much cheaper. Now combine them with flying ships, enchanted weapons, and other tools, and the magus world would be much more powerful. Even a rank 4 magus and above wasn't safe. According to Harry's rough estimates, an average nuke is comparable to the full power attack of a rank 4 magus. Sure, a rank 4 magus could survive it, but nukes could be shot from kilometers away. A more powerful one may even reach the level of a rank 5 being. The disregard of such a big workforce, to only leave it at the level of primitive peasants, wasn't going into his brain. There is so much wasted potential. Give everyone free access to the elementary meditation technique, and they wouldn't have to care about the harmful radiation at all. There is no need to construct large and expensive towers that neutralize it, like in the Lightside region. It was such a lack of common sense he already knew from the wizarding world that made him question how good of an influence magic even is. And one more major question, how did the humans of this world even discover a way to artificially cultivate a magical core? It was nothing else but this. While wizards developed it naturally, probably through evolution inside their bodies, the magus created and cultivated it in their heads. The humans in the magus world are not different from the humans in any of the other worlds where he has been. So what caused the magus civilization? Where are the regular humans always so medieval? How was the first magus born? Ho violet leaves and Nino root. Vicky asked as she read the names of the high-priority ingredients on the list. Aren't they pretty common herbs? Neela pointed out being born in the Poolfield Kingdom. Yes, they are common. Even though we can't have enough of them, they are the most crucial substitute ingredients I need for an ancient spiritual force potion. Harry explained, showing them the recipe for the azure potion he had acquired from Croft. This was the only potion he already knew the substitute ingredients for. Since this was exactly the potion Leyland had used while being an acolyte to reach the same speed as a grade 5 talent, with his actual talent being only grade 3. Hearing this caused the eyes of all three girls to widen. They had heard of spiritual force potions, but they were extremely precious. Any recipe that could be reasonably produced was a tightly kept secret in any organization. You mean like an actual spiritual force potion? Neela asked, trying to confirm the fact. Her Welter's family didn't own a recipe for such a potion. Harry nodded. Indeed, but with the substitute ingredients, it is only useful for acolytes. But this would already boost our force and bring you three closer to the level needed to attempt the advancement to official magus. And the reason you want us to buy even more farms and instruct them to farm them on our routes is because we need a lot of them. Basida realized. No, I am thinking a bit long-term here. There should be enough for our needs on the market. But if we create a network of farms that produce these ingredients, we can use them to sustain our own acolytes in the future. Nobody needs to know what ingredients are exactly part of these potions, that's why they should also produce some other herbs I concluded are useful. Harry replied. Since he started podiwondering in Abyssal Bone Forest, he has often picked up common ingredients and tested them for their potion viability. While they were not on the same level as established potion ingredients that were normally used by magi, many could act as substitutes for different potions, effectively creating lesser versions of some potions. It didn't hurt to have more potions available in the future, even if they were weaker. And that's the reason why you instructed us to buy samples from all kinds of herbs available. For even more experiments. Neela had a look of realization on her beautiful face. I bought a ton of different ancient potion recipes from Croft. Many of their ingredients have been gone from the south coast for centuries, but it should be possible to find substitutes for them too. That's why you should take all kinds of samples with you, from common metals to flowers, herbs, and food. Reasoned Harry, as he stored his own chest in his inventory. Can't I stay with you? I asked Bicky with the same eyes a puppy would have. An extremely effective weapon. But Harry steeled himself while avoiding these eyes. We already talked about this. By splitting up, we will shake off any pursuer looking for a group of 4. I showed off too much strength, and they will be on the lookout for an official magus with such a group. Also, by splitting up, we will be able to cover more ground. Still, I know I will miss you. Basida said this time, while the other two girls nodded. Harry knew what she was talking about. He had been living with Basida for almost a year now. Neela was also a few months old, and he had seen Bicky almost every day in Croft's laboratory. He had gotten very close with these three girls. Right now, they were the closest thing he had to a family in this world. I will too. He sighed, but it will be safer this way. And we will be able to cover more ground. I need you to find as many magi meeting points as possible. And gather as many samples as possible. You know your routes. The two of us will take the southern part of the Poolfield Kingdom. Basita pointed at herself and Bicky. I will travel over the northern part, Neela said. Yes, and don't forget to use the transfiguration spell, also, use actual hair coloring to change the look of your hair. This will throw off people looking for magic. Harry reminded them. We know, we heard you the first few times. Chuckled Bicky. Then we will meet each other in a few weeks. I will have a base ready. Harry was the one who would take the most direct route through the center of the Poolfield Kingdom. Abyssal Bone Forest Academy was on the western end of the Poolfield Kingdom, with Greystone City being the closest normal settlement. Their goal, Extreme Night City, was on the direct opposite site, in the eastmost region of the kingdom. It was actually quite a big city, at least bigger than any city in the north. The biggest settlement in the north was White Harbor, with several thousand people. While Extreme Night City had a population of over 100,000 inhabitants. By moving on 3 different routes, they would cover a lot of ground and find more markets to sell their products and other goods. If they just rely on Neela and her Welters family, it would create questions at some point. Harry's potion success rate was extremely high. Until he was ready to make his true strength public, he would have to use different ways to sell his potions and other goods without causing any major attention. A wide range of different markets was ideal. With the help of concealment spells, they would be able to sell anonymously. Bicky and Basita take the carriage. Neela, buy a new one. Harry said, as they were ready to split up. Their groups made sense since Bicky and Basita were the weakest ones, and Neela was quite strong and a bit more experienced in the outside world. She would be safer alone than the other two. Harry, with his strength, was in no trouble at all. He had also left them with some safety measures, like a few wards and different life-saving pills. Neither was he with them, so they wouldn't be affected by his Potter luck. See you soon, Harry. Neela whispered into his ear before she placed a kiss directly on his lips. Of course, Bicky and Basita wouldn't let themselves get outdone and did the same. Each of them kissed him with a blush before they left the carriage together. And soon he was alone again. Chapter 70. Nico Robin POV. Just where are you? She sighed while she read through the next stack of reports on their current levels of grain. They were almost exhausted, and they needed to keep an eye on how much they were selling. While fresh vegetables were popular amongst their buyers in the north, their biggest interest was unexpectedly in fresh grain. While planning their future harvest, they hadn't calculated the past experiences of the northern lords. The seasons in this strange world were completely different from the ones in the regular blues. It was more like this world was in the Grand Line, with their summers and winters going on for years. Fresh vegetables were nourishing and healthy, but they wouldn't normally last for the whole winter. Meanwhile, properly stored grains would last for a very long time and were the kind of food that would allow the people in the north to survive in the later years of winter. And this was also reflected in their purchasing behavior. While they wanted to buy fresh vegetables, only enough to cover a bit more than their current consumption, grain, on the other hand, was something they were buying as much as possible, especially since it was so cheap. This caused the small problem Skagos was having just now. Their grain stores were running out. It was caused by a small miscalculation on their side, based on their different experiences with seasons. Of course, they had already adjusted what they planted on their fields, but their next harvest was still a few weeks away. Knock, knock. Come in. Robin said, and the door to her office opened as Monet entered it. Monet was the same age as her, a beautiful green-haired girl wearing glasses. She was currently working as a kind of main secretary, acting as an intermediary between the people under their employ and Lust and her. With the rise of trade, she had become very busy. And what did they say? Robin asked as she put down the stack of files she had been working on. They were understanding and agreed to buy more vegetables this month for a reduced rate. Although Sir Wendell Manderley wished to talk to Harry personally, he still accepted my excuse that he is currently on an expedition to Yeti. Monet explained as she adjusted her glasses. Behind her eyes, she had the same worries about Harry as herself. But Tiamat said she could still feel Harry with her bond. At first, it felt to her as if he were gone, but then she slightly felt him again, then he was gone again, and then it was there again. It was extremely confusing. She was so confused that she had gone to visit other older dragons in a place called the Vault of Souls for their guidance. They neither did have an idea of what was going on with Harry and the bond. But of one thing, they were certain, Harry was still alive. The bond never lies. This fact was what kept Skagos running. While they thought Harry had died, it had hit Robin hard. But he was still alive, and she would make sure that he had a place he could return to. After all, he gave her a safe home, and she would do the same for him. All of them would. Another problem was Tiamat. While Skagos was isolated, this had been no problem. But now, a living dragon would gain unwanted attention. At the same time, they didn't wish to hide Tiamat in a cave the whole time. A solution had offered itself. The store was still working, but they hadn't gained any new connections. Already existing ones were still working. A few days ago, an elvish woman called Arya, just like the daughter of Lord Stark, came through the door. She was from the same world as Tiamat and was looking for Harry. She told them they were under the attack of creatures called Urgles under the lead of a dark being, a so-called shadow, by the name of Durza. While Harry wasn't here, Tiamat knew what was going on. They came to the decision that she would go to Farthendur, the home of the dwarfs, and assist another dragon rider and his dragon during their battle. She also decided she would stay with them and visit the city of the elves to get trained as a dragon. Harry apparently told her that there were a ton of things she could learn from a teacher there, even without him. It was a good solution for their immediate problems about hiding her. The woman, Arya, to their shock, swore in the ancient language that she would look after Tiamat with her life. At this rate, we will have to focus on expanding O'Hara's port. Monet pointed out, we already are under our current limit, and trade will become only bigger during the next months. Being brought back from her tough times, Robin replied, Lust has already instructed the builders to focus more on additional landing places, piers, and other necessary structures to house and entertain the seamen at the port. Other parts of O'Hara have become secondary. Please make sure that there are always guards around the Tree of Knowledge. One of the last decisions Harry made before he left was the name of their port city. O'Hara, in memory of her birthplace. In memory of all the lives lost. Robin had planted the sapling of the Tree of Wisdom they found at the ruins of O'Hara, right in the spot where the center of the new city would be one day. It was still small right now, and it had to be guarded so nobody would destroy it. Having heard from Harry about the elvish magic and their connection to nature, she had asked Arya if she was able to grow the tree. Unfortunately, based on her description and the sheer size of the original Tree of Knowledge, Arya was too weak to do it alone. She still agreed to help her once she was back with the elves. After hearing her tale, there was no way the elves would leave such a tree unattended. It gave Robin hope. Maybe she could restore the legacy of O'Hara in the future. Harry would help her with that in the future. He had mentioned the books were on Elbaf. Monet's face formed a frown. Other necessary structures, do we really need whorehouses? It's common in this world. Seafarers are expecting it. Which is beneficial for our trade. We already own all the businesses in O'Hara, including such, which is a massive investment. Under us, the girls get at least treated properly. If we didn't offer it, it would still happen, just in worse condition. This way, we can make it safe and legal and profit from it. Robin reasoned. Monet nodded, she already had that discussion with Lust, who was in charge of that part of business. Do you think he will really return? It's already been a month. Yes, he will. He is alive, and he promised it. Ah, tasty. Harry muttered as he bit into a skewer of freshly grilled hare with some wild vegetables that he had gathered in his surroundings. He was a few days away from Greystone City. By only traveling by horse, he was much quicker and had used the opportunity to explore as much of the area as he could. After all, the region around Greystone City was still close to the Abyssal Bone Forest Academy, and scrying with Dromcopa could allow him to gain a lot of useful information. Exploring as much land as possible had been something the dragon riders of Alagagia put much value in. After all, one could only scratch something with the spell a person had seen before. By exploring, he would gain an advantage if he ever needed to scry on someone in the pool-filed kingdom. It also gave him the opportunity to collect more materials, like some interesting plants there, a rare animal here, and so on. Suddenly there were voices, over there, get him. The bushes in front of him split apart while he was still enjoying his food. Fate is a strange thing. I am pretty sure I took a different route. In front of him rushed a large, muscular guy protecting a young lady. A situation he was certain Leyland had encountered originally. Why were they even here? Moments later, the man spotted Harry, giving him a bitter smile. I'm afraid this will implicate you as well. It didn't take long, and a group of armed soldiers wearing leather armor appeared from the very same direction, shouting, "Over there! Don't let them escape!" Only their leader was wearing decently crafted chain mail. But compared to the work he knew from Lisbeth with the SOW system, this was nothing. They clearly were not a military group or outlaws, but soldiers belonging to some noble house. Even in West Eros, it was common that the regular soldier wore leather armor, or chain mail, rather than castle-forged plate armor. Such armor was ridiculously expensive to craft and to maintain. Many successless hedge knights in West Eros went bankrupt on their armor. But for them to be outlaws or mercenaries, these armories were to be uniforms. These kinds of unorganized groups usually wore a wide array of armor pieces from different craftsmen and materials. Here they were all similar, with a coat of arms on them. Their level of strength was nothing noteworthy, none of them even reached the level of an actual knight with a knight training method. They were all at most at the level a bit above human to preparatory knight. Compared to his grand knight strength, they were nothing. "Who are you?" the leader asked, looking at him with suspicion. "Probably your death, but right now you are an innocent bystander." Harry chuckled as he took another bite from his skewer. Just based on his look, he wasn't intimidating. Nothing more than a very pretty boy with slightly pointed ears. His casual reply had thrown the leader off guard. This triggered the noble girl to ask him for help. Something about some poisoning or another plot for some land and riches. It was basically an inheritance dispute where that girl got swindled out of her inheritance by another lord who wanted to take care of loose ends. The girl was a pretty blue-eyed blonde, about 18-19 years old, and that has been making him have nice eyes. He didn't really need land or a noble title, it was pretty meaningless to him right now, but having her as a subordinate with her land could generate more useful resources for him. Harry simply had no idea how he should get home and was building a power base for himself to increase his chances but also enhance his future power afterwards. Having access to more troops and lands wouldn't hurt. But Harry wouldn't be a nice guy. That noble girl was trying to use him by involving him in the matter. Honestly, at this point, he was a bit frustrated and spiteful. Living amongst dark magi for the last few months has changed his temper. His previous experiences with his system did so too. He was sure that he had been used and manipulated by some powerful being. It pissed him off. Existence was a place where the weak got eaten or used by the strong. And he wouldn't be weak anymore. The troops had already overpowered and taken care of the noble lady's guard and were now approaching her to capture her. During the whole time, their leader didn't let Harry out of his eyes. "So you want my help? What are you willing to give me for it?" Harry asked the girl casually, ignoring the drawn swords now pointing at him as soon as he had spoken. "Everything. Even I will belong to you," she cried out. A contract appeared in his hands, and he suddenly appeared at her side and said, "Well, then sign this. It's based on your words. Or I will just leave now." For some reason, the soldiers weren't moving anymore, they stood still as if frozen. But the girl didn't notice this yet. She looked at him, a crafty look in her eyes, before taking the pen that Harry had in his hand and saying, "Yes, I will sign anything." As soon as she had placed her name on it, her eyes widened, and it glowed up. Harry put it in his inventory, along with his many other contracts. "It is binding. The fact that you wanted to trick me doesn't matter. The contract makes you my property, and there is nothing you can do about it now. You are a magus. What are you planning with me?" she asked fearfully, as she had realized what she probably just did, until she noticed the strange behavior of the soldiers around her. "Why are they not moving?" "Oh, they have been paralyzed. Like you, they were plotting against me and planning to kill me as soon as they took care of you. No witnesses, you know." Harry said it was a modified rank 1 spell model based on Petrificus Totalis just with an AoE effect. Even though stronger foes can resist it, someone on their level has no chance. "They will dearly regret it," Harry said, as he transfigured all 23 of them into pebbles and stored them in his inventory. "I need some experimental subjects soon. You, on the other hand, are the lucky one. Sure, you are now my property and have to obey me, but you will become more powerful than you ever dreamed. You will even get your revenge yourself in the future." "Will I? Won't you treat me just as a slave?" she asked nervously. "Oh, you will be my maid. A noble maid, a viscount as my maid. I need someone who takes care of my household soon." Harry chuckled as he remembered her noble rank. which was actually funny and a bit arousing. It was just the way such a world worked, but you will also become a magus, and as long as you behave and are loyal, you will get a very good life. What was your name again? Celeste. Celeste Lenning. Celeste answered downcast, as she felt the compulsion to answer. Don't worry so much. It won't be so bad. You will get your revenge and more. Harry placated her, still having a bit of his old softness. He needed to harden himself, or others would always trample over him. Especially the multiverse is a place where the strong eat the weak. Chapter 71. Are you sure we are at the right place, Master? Celeste asked as she climbed on her horse beside him. The way she had to address him is still bothering her. She was sure that Harry didn't really care how she addressed him, but he found it amusing to force her to use such a title. The first Magus market in the Poolfield Kingdom is indeed here. Harry nodded as he observed the rundown village in front of them. You are quite lucky that your talent isn't too bad with grade 3 and have already reached the level of a rank 1 acolyte during our journey. Or I would have ordered you to stay here. Why? She asked, confused. While he had taught her his efficiently improved version of the elementary mediation technique, she still lacked a lot of knowledge. For now, she would have a much slower learning pace than an acolyte in an academy, simply because of the lack of resources, lessons, and a proper library. Look at that village. See how run down it is. The people here are dying very early. Harry explained, as they walked around it towards a hut made of bricks. This is caused by the radiation an magus gives off naturally. Even acolytes give off that radiation. While a handful of acolytes in one place don't cause much damage, hundreds of people permanently stay in a place. Only with enough resistance to that natural radiation can you remain safe. You got it since you advanced to the level of a rank 1 acolyte. The market is in the village? Just in public? Celeste asked, bewildered. Even as a noble on the south coast, she had rarely seen any magus. No, it's right below. They knocked lightly on the corroded door of the hut. Who are you? A cold voice asked from behind. Two wandering acolytes wishing to trade some resources. Harry replied calmly. With a theatrical creak, the door opened, revealing a black-robed figure behind it. The man behind the door reminded him of Mad-Eye Moody. He gave off a similar intense feeling. Clearly, this was an experienced fighter, although only on a rank 3 acolyte. Sure, he stood no chance against Harry or the real Mad-Eye Moody, but he was intimidating enough for the majority of wandering magi, who were mostly acolytes in these parts. According to his own estimates, the real Mad-Eye Moody was around the level of a rank 2 magus, though direct comparisons were difficult due to differences in power systems and innate spells. However, it was clear that Moody was well above the level of an average rank 1 magus. He was intimidating enough for Celeste. It doesn't matter if this is your first time here, you will listen to the rules. Any fight in the market is a direct provocation to the Redbud family. The acolyte warned them. This was a market backed by one of the major families backing the academy. Harry wasn't scared of them, after all, he had already stolen the first level of their advanced meditation technique, but he wasn't planning to cause trouble. Markets were a good way to get resources. Of course. Harry nodded, followed by Celeste. All right, the entrance fee is 1 magic crystal per person. After receiving the payment for both of them from Harry, the guard tapped lightly onto the fireplace, and a machine began to rumble. The fireplace swung to the right, revealing a flight of stairs heading into the depths. It reminded him of the architectural style of the Abyssal Bone Forest Academy. At the bottom of the stairs, a massive cavern revealed itself. The market was huge, at least the size of several football fields. It seemed as if it had been built into a huge natural cavern. In the center of the market were buildings made out of grey rocks, which were surrounded by several circles of wooden huts. Even a few street stalls littered the paths in between. Several people in different colored robes were stepping in and out of the shop. Their robes were either grey, white, or black, and many followed the common rules of the Magus society on the south coast, although not all of them. Generally, grey robes were worn by acolytes. White and black by magi, while the white ones were more research and healing oriented, the black ones were more focused on combat. The sheer number of people here made Harry feel greedy. He was certain that if he was careful, he could rob this whole place clean. In the whole market, the strongest presences he could sense were rank 1 magi and rank 2 magi in his range of sense, which encompassed the whole market and the surrounding landscape. But this wasn't what he was here for. If he started such a major event now, this would piss off several major factors, not only the Redbud family or the Abyssal Bone Forest Academy. These magi had all kinds of backgrounds. Still, he could rob the acolytes of their knowledge for now. Their minds were like a free buffet. A small girl approached Celeste and asked, "Miss, do you need a guide? It's only one magic crystal." It was Harry who answered, "No need." These guides, while looking innocent, were quite crafty. Approaching first-time customers to earn some magic crystals, even having agreements with some shops. In truth, there were freely available guides provided by the patrons of these markets. But Harry had an even easier time by picking the minds of these small guides and learning the ins and outs of the markets, including the most useful spots. "What are we here for, Master?" Celeste asked while watching the bustling place out of curiosity, staying close to him. She knew she was a very small fry in this place. Raising some funds, browsing for useful stuff and, most importantly, recruiting. Harry replied. "Recruiting? You will see," Harry said as they strolled straight to the potion shop, which usually has the best prices. As soon as he stated what he was there for and the amount of potions he was selling, they received the VIP treatment in the shop. Harry didn't care what kind of attention he was gaining, even though he was on the surface, he was only a rank 2 acolyte. There was no way they would see through his concealment spells after nobody in the Abyssal Bone Forest Academy managed to. In the end, he had completed a deal worth 12,450 magic crystals. An enormous amount of wealth for an acolyte. But it was no surprise, with his inventory, he never had to destroy any potions to hide his true talents. After a few weeks of studying, with the help of the AI chip, his success rate was already higher than that of Croft's, a magus who had dedicated his life to poti wondering. In fact, the amount of potion he had sold her was not everything. He had already sold a medium batch himself and through Bicky, Basita, and Neela. They also carried about 2,000 magic crystals worth of potion each with them. One of the things he focused on were high-value potions, the ones that were normally hard to brew. Since they were so hard to brew, he didn't really sell a lot of them in the academy but stockpiled them in his inventory. The potion store, which actually belonged directly to the Redbud family, even tried to recruit him. But Harry obviously declined. While gaining some funds by selling some of his produce had been part of his goal for coming here, he was actually interested in something else. As it was common for the main character in such a story, Leyland had stumbled upon something valuable in one of the stores. Harry visited the very same store under the same pretense as Leyland did, because he wanted news about the war at the academy. At this point, not only Sage Gotham's hut was fighting against the Abyssal Bone Forest Academy, but Whitewood's castle had joined in too. If he remembered it right, the head of Whitewood's castle was a woman who held a deep grudge against their own chairman, Siley. Probably some love bullshit, but that whole plot had become irrelevant in the story. Harry already knew this news. His true goal had been the item that he had been required to buy first in order to get the news, a collection of notes from Lo Ian's teachings. Lo Ian was a rank 2 magus, famous for his research. These particular notes were from his research and experiments while he was still an acolyte. Strength-wise, the contents didn't matter much to Harry. But application-wise, it was very appealing, especially if he could improve and mass-produce the results. Beyond many experiments, these pages contained the blueprints for a magical artifact, which was basically nothing but personal shield technology with a rechargeable battery. These pages were coded on a level that was normally only possible to be deciphered by an official level magus, thanks to their enhanced minds. With the AI chip, even Leyland had managed it in over 93 days, at his current level, it took Harry less than a minute. The so-called Fallen Star Pendant, after improvements from Leyland, had been able to block spells on the level of a rank 1 magus. Its internal energy storage could be recharged, like its name suggests, with a starlight. Imagine being able to mass-produce it and equip an army of soldiers with such artifacts. Even if this wasn't possible to mass-produce, it was still useful to equip some acolytes with. And more important, it was knowledge that he could add to his database knowledge about magus technology, even if magical in nature. Who could say if it wasn't possible to use the same principles, just with another more common power source, to replicate its effects in the future? Or it could contain the secrets to generating actual electricity from starlight. That was the part about the magus world that bothered Harry, their limited perspective solely on their personal power. How are they unable to see the potential their whole civilization has? The heights they could reach? Maybe his perspective was different because he knew of other universes. Or the fact that he hadn't to worry about his lifespan at the moment, as long as he was a dragon rider, he could live for thousands of years. If he was actually immortal beyond being killed, he wasn't actually sure yet. None of the elves lived as long as the oldest of the magi did. Some of the magus, still hidden away since the Great War amongst the world, were over 10,000 years old. The oldest elf from Alagasia he knew of was Renanelda. She was the legendary elven blacksmith who had created all the blades of the dragon riders and has been alive for over 2,500 years before the pact between dragon and elves that gave birth to the dragon riders in the first place. Sure, she was old, but nothing compared yet to the 10,000 years he knew any of the hidden magi had lived for. He also knew these magi would live as long as the universe existed, or they would be destroyed, which was hard to accomplish. The same couldn't be said of the elves. While they remained youthful for a very long time, they still experienced traces of aging. "Where are we off next?" Celeste asked as they stepped out of the door. "I have enough common ingredients for now. Until I have a specific need, we don't have to purchase any. But I need more exclusive ones, and we still need to recruit people." Harry replied as he looked towards an empty alley. "Come follow me." Chapter 72. In this empty alley, the entrance to the VIP area was concealed behind a wall. Before they reached that wall, Harry handed Celeste a sack filled with magic crystals and said, "You will need it to get in." By knocking on a stone in the wall corner, an underground passage has been revealed. At the end of that passage, they reached a door guarded by two rank acolytes wearing the blood-red robes of the Redbud family. Not only were they strong, they were also equipped with magical artifacts. The VIP area of such markets was usually the part where the real deals happened. High value and even unique items like magic artifacts. In the regular area, the available items could either be mass-produced, like farmable ingredients, or common in value. Of course, the VIP area had its own price. Not everyone could get in, usually it was targeted at official magi. Acolytes were quite uncommon in there. An item of proof or an item at least worth 1,000 magic crystals. One of the red-robed acolytes said it coldly. They don't seem to be the type that would hesitate to strike them down if they were here to play around. Both Celeste and him handed over a sack with 1,000 magic crystals each. Inside their sacks were 10 high-grade magic crystals that had a value of 100 low-grade ones. Magic crystals could be easily fused into bigger ones with the right spells. One only had to be careful about the standardized values, or it would become troublesome to pay with them. The standard values were low-grade, the common standard size. Medium-grade ones were worth 10 low-grade ones, and the high-grade ones were worth 100. Naturally, it was possible to fuse them even more, but these were the standard denominations used as currency. After confirming the value of the magic crystals, the red-robed acolyte returned their sacks before opening the door, allowing them to pass. Once inside, an interesting sight revealed itself. The whole VIP area was down below the original Magus Market. It was overall smaller and more compact, with a single street traversing it. As expected, this whole area was heavily crowded by rank 3 acolytes and a larger amount of magi than above. There were a few rank 2 acolytes, but rank 1 ones were very rare. First, they stopped at a potion store to acquire the more rare ingredients he needed for the ancient potion recipes he had bought from Croft. He left quite a bit of wealth here, but he was still unable to acquire all he needed. Croft sold these recipes for a reasonable price, for a reason after all, even if he was his student. There were a lot of high-quality goods available here, even some low-grade magic artifacts. While he was interested in studying all kinds of objects, he already had enough on his plate for now and needed to preserve his wealth for these needs. His main goal was further down the market. "Scary, isn't it?" Harry asked as they stopped in front of a large, fenced area. Celeste looked at it, frozen in fear. Behind the fence was an area filled with many naked humans, with empty and emotionless looks on their faces. "Slaves." Harry finished her tufts before pointing at something and saying, "Look at them." There was a group of beautiful females. One of the slave traders was even groping some of the big, full breasts to show off the goods. "Are they?" Celeste tried to ask with a hitched breath. "Nobles?" "Yes." "Would that have happened to you?" "Probably, if you didn't die before." Harry replied while watching them. Besides Celeste, they get specially trained and dosed with potions to have their former personalities wiped. Their new owner usually chooses new names for them. But their former selves are basically dead, even if the body still lives. It's usually impossible for anyone on the south coast to bring them back. You would need to be able to reverse time or something similar. This was exactly what he wanted to show her. While his contracts were absolute, she could still resent him and find ways to get back at him by finding loopholes. Putting every possible scenario of how anyone could outmaneuver a contract together was simply impossible. He still wanted her to work well and put effort into it. Harry would never abuse anyone working for him, even if forced into a contract. It wasn't simply his style, he believed in loyalty and effort. If Celeste developed some loyalty for him after seeing this, her future would be better, and she would resist less. She looked at him with wide eyes and asked, "Are you planning to buy some bed slaves?" Harry had to snort at that. "That's your first idea? Quite the perverted mind you have." "What? You specifically showed me that," she complained, embarrassed. "No, I have no need to buy women to warm my bed. I prefer women to be willing to share my bed. Forcing them or robbing them of their free will is just not for me. Having them willingly is the true path." Harry replied before walking towards one of the slave traders, "No, we need some manpower. Or rather, you need. One of your duties will be to manage the businesses I acquire, and more people will make it easier." What he wanted to buy were knights' manpower that he could employ for his different interests in the Poolfield Kingdom without having to interfere himself. A warrior trained to the knight level costs 100 magic crystals, one on the level of a grand knight costs 2,000. In the end, he and Celeste walked out of the market with 10 regular knights and 2 grand knight level slaves. The grand knights would be useful to his research too, while having the necessary strength to protect his interests from anyone else. Usually, grand knights were high-ranking nobles, that's why their price was so high. But the research value of studying their physiology made it worth it. He had specially chosen 2 that had trained in different techniques. The same goes for the knights too. All of them had used a different technique to train their bodies. Knight training was a different method from the Magus path, or rather, one of the paths to progress in power. There were many advanced meditation techniques that required a knight training method first. It had been a pretty much confirmed theory in the original novel that the different knight training methods originate from an advanced meditation technique. They could be based on the same one, like, for example, the branded knight technique, which was based around enhancing the body with runes. But it was more likely they were based on many different advanced meditation techniques that were more physical than mystical or magical in nature. Anyway, Harry would love to study them all thoroughly to gain more references about advanced mediation techniques. Right now, he is facing one major problem. While he would be able to reach the peak of rank 3 acolyte easily enough, without his old system, he had no way to progress. While the multiverse had many ways for himself to become stronger, for example, Haki, the Sao system, and rituals were things that the worlds he usually had access to could offer. Unfortunately, he was stuck here right now, with no way to get back without becoming stronger first. He had to use an advanced meditation technique. While he knew the location of a powerful one, a rank 4 advanced mediation technique, that could potentially reach rank 5, the highest power in the South Coast was rank 3 for reference. Too bad it wasn't perfectly compatible with his own physiology. The first problem was that he wasn't fully human. This technique was one that allowed the user to become a warlock. A warlock is a magus that uses the bloodline of a creature to become more powerful. He technically had a bloodline already, a mix of elvish and draconic, which would most likely clash with that particular meditation technique, but he had to take a look first. More importantly, his affinity just wasn't compatible. While his secondary affinity with fire did fit, the main affinity needed for the technique to be truly effective was darkness. His main affinity was death. Elemental affinity is in the early stages of a meditation technique and is more important than the talent itself. Most advanced meditation techniques belonging to magi focused on their elemental affinity in the first level. At least from what he could conclude from the original story. If one thing most cultivation worlds had in common was that one needed a stable foundation to reach a high level, unfitting elemental affinites was not something he would call stable. So here he was, he had to find a fitting advanced meditation technique for himself. He had managed to steal a few rank 1 ones from the acolytes with backgrounds in the academy, but they were all unfitting for him too. None of them had the death element as their main affinity. The Redbud family used the blood element, the Lilytel family used metal, and the Lilyels used darkness. He also found 2 more in the academy, a fire one and a plant one. While they were good references, none of them were fitting for him. And then there was the problem that they were only rank 1, or rather that it was all he had access to. One of the biggest challenges the ancient magus faced was creating higher levels for their meditation techniques. It had been a lot of trial and error, costing them many lives and resources. Ancient magi studied and used many different creatures, concepts, resources, and even other worlds to develop their meditation techniques. As many references and research materials as possible would help Harry with his own problem of finding a fitting meditation technique. It was also nice that more research material was offering itself to him. "Stay back, this is not someone you are able to face." Harry ordered his newly bought slaves, who had placed themselves protectively in front of Celeste and him, and the two figures waiting for them just a bit outside of the marketplace. "A smart little acolyte. How tactful of you. If you cooperate, we will let you live." One of the black-robed figures said with a smirk, "We couldn't help but notice that you have quite the big amount of wealth on yourself and were so foolish to flaunt it around." "Oh, so you were the one spying on us in the potion store?" Harry answered calmly, "I thought you belonged to the store." "Well, maybe you do. Is it normal to rob your customers?" "Shut up. You have nothing to say here. Hand obediently over your belongings and sign this." The other black-robed figure said this while holding out a piece of paper. Harry recognized what kind of paper this was. A contract powered by the Trial's Eye. They were trying to do the same as he had done so often. Binding him through a contract. That made him internally chuckle, but on the surface, he had a nervous look. "Please let us go. I will forget what happened here." "We don't care if you forget or not. You have no choice in this matter. Now come here and sign this," the first black-robed figure said. Harry did as ordered, slowly walking over to the person with the contract while the group of knights he was with and Celeste watched him worry. Once he arrived, besides Magus, he took the offered quiz and moved his hands towards the paper. Then everything went fast, 2 green flashes were followed by red ones, and the 2 Magus were on the floor. "Ah, surprise attacks always work nicely," Harry said. He relaxed. Not only had they looked down on him for his rank 2 acolyte level of strength, but they had been careless. These 2 were just rank 1 magi that had advanced with Grind Water. Even worse was the fact that Harry hadn't noticed any defensive spells on them. The rank 1 spell model they must have used as their innate spell to become a rank 1 Magus must not have been one, leaving them completely open to surprise attacks. Basically the bottom of the whole official Magus spectrum, barely better than a rank 3 acolyte. He was sure they would have cast defensive spells if they hadn't looked down on him, making this whole thing more troublesome. But this way he could take them out swiftly and add them to his collection of transfigured, formerly human pebbles. "Let's go, we still have a bit of distance to cover." Then he pointed at 3 of the knights and said, "You 3. Get 3 carriages from the village. 1 house, 1 for Celeste and myself, and 2 where the rest of you are able to fit." Chapter 73. The remainder of the journey towards the Eastwoods province happened without any interruption. It seems having lost 2 Magus, even if just 2 low-grade ones that advanced with the help of Grind Water, has scared off the party behind the attack. It was no surprise since in the Poolfield Kingdom and the regions around it, the magi that advanced with an advanced meditation technique to rank 1 were at the top of the food chains, above them were just the rare few rank 2 Magus. As for rank 3 magi, there were probably less than 10 in the whole south coast and the rulers of this continent. Even a rank 1 Magus, while being nothing more than trash in the entirety of the Magus world, was in the south coast a powerful force. Someone who could take care of 2 of them by himself was nobody. Any of the forces in the Poolfield Kingdom wanted to casually offend over some magic crystals. Now with slaves taking care of the journey, Harry could enjoy his time inside a carriage. While Celeste was assisting him, he was experimenting in fields he hadn't put much effort into yet. The AI chip already completed the analysis of the different potion formulas he acquired from Croft before he had even left the academy. In order to locate substitute ingredients, he would need to experiment with different combinations. Nothing he could do in a carriage without a steady supply of new materials. Constant simulations of different spell models made by the AI chip also brought only minor advancements. In order to create an actual rank 4 spell model that was applicable without a great cost, he would need more materials. Well, he already simulated a few rank 4 spell models, each of them having the power of a nuke. But they were not the common type of spell one could use casually. No, they were suicide techniques, based on a spell he had learned from the Elgeneri before their coma. The simple explanation for these spells is that one turns his own body into a nuke, channeling all his energy into a magical nuclear reaction. It was based on one of the spells that had destroyed the formerly capital of the Dragon Riders. During the war against Galbatorix, one of the Dragon Riders had turned himself into unstable energy, causing a nuclear reaction that pretty much destroyed the island the dragon riders had lived on. The radiation he had encountered before visiting the Rock of Kuthian, why ever he went there, he doesn't remember it anymore, was caused by that spell. Of course Harry had no interest in suiciding himself, so these spell models were out of question. Any other possible rank 4 spell model was still years of simulation away and unlikely to be usable by him at his current level. Instead, he decided to focus on a different field of magic. Runes and enchanting. While the books Sirius had left in Westeros contained only the basics, it was more than enough to start. While runes were used during the creation of the Marauders map, it was more the area Remus had worked in than Sirius. Meanwhile Sirius and his own father James knew the basics because he needed it to modify the map and add new rooms. It had been Remus who completed the complex parts. But combined with the information available in the Abyssal Bone Forest Academy, the ones he had stolen from the other acolytes' minds, and the research notes from Loian's teachings, it allowed him to start experimentation and simulation with his AI chip. Right now he didn't want to create magical artifacts that he could use for combat. He had a completely different field in mind. His goal had been blueprints for different scientific tools from his past lives, be it microscopes, centrifuges, telescopes, particle colliders, or even a computer. A magic-based version of it would be useful. A combination of science and magic was always powerful. A power he wouldn't abandon. Without his gamer system, he no longer could just grow infinitely by just grinding stats and skills. Magus cultivation was powerful, but even the final levels were weaker than many other worlds, like, for example, Dragon Ball or even Naruto. Warlock of the Magus world cultivation system had more advantage in immortality. But the Magus were still bound to this particular fictional universe. And he needed a new cheat. AI chip was cool and all, but it didn't make him stronger, it just gave him the tools. He needed a new cheat, and a combination of science and magic was a good start that could exploit the AI chip fully. Especially magic-based computing sounded like an amazing idea to give him a head start. With the AI chip and further advances into magical robotics or similar, he would be able to automate experimentation and research. Of course the progress in that field was slow, he really wished he had taken computer science in one of his past lives. Master! There is a city ahead. The voice of one of the Grand Knights resounded from the front of the carriage. His 2 strongest slaves had taken upon themselves to guard him personally. Even though he had spent considerable time to map out the region around his path, he still managed to reach the Eastwood province in 7 months. A few spells here and there making the carriages lighter or increasing the stamina of the horses allowed them to travel much faster. Where are we? According to the map, this should be Extreme Night City, sir. The knight replied politely. Harry opened the covers to get a look out of the carriage. Outside he saw a withered forest, plants that were dead and dried out. The shadow cast by the dark clouds gave it a gloomy look. In the distance he could make out the gates of the city, the walls were not very high. With his current physique, he would have no problem climbing over them. The withered forest had been the eastern parts of the Dark Knight's woods surrounding the city. These woods were the very livelihood of this city, generating a large part of its income. His mission was to investigate the true reason behind the withering and solve it. If he were a regular acolyte, he probably would just laze around and do something else until the war in the academy was over. But Harry already knew what he would find there: the MCS plot armor he was leeching off. He already wasted more than enough time on the journey by mapping out the kingdom and locating the different hidden Magus markets. You guys should enter the city. I will be joining you in a few hours. Get some temporary lodging ready. Harry ordered as he climbed out of the carriage. Shouldn't I accompany you, Master Harry? Celeste asked as she looked at him, confused about the sudden change. No, take care of matters here. You have the lead. Harry said as he threw a sack filled with gold coins towards her. You would just die with your current strength. None of them dared to disagree with him. After all, they all had seen how strong he was by easily dispatching 2 magi for their unbeatable existences and turning them into pebbles that he now carried with him. Yes, Master. Celeste bowed as she collected the purse he had given her. A simple lodging is enough. Once I return, we will get something more permanent. Harry ordered before he turned around and headed deeper into woods, following the trail of withered vegetation. In the meantime, he pulled a small crystal ball out of his inventory space. This small ball is a magical artifact used by the Academy to record mission reports. It's used as proof for the completion of a mission. This artifact is basically a magical camera that he had to use to record proof for the mission completion. Harry had spent quite a bit of time carefully examining and studying this artifact. For one, he simply wanted to know how it worked and add his insights to his database for future use. And he also needed to make sure it couldn't be used to spy on him and what it recorded. He still needed to cover up his real strength for a while, or he would have wasted staying in the academy. There was an idea he had that he wanted to try out, and for that he needed to return to the academy in the future. While it was a loose idea, his current research confirmed that it should work for now. Activate. He ordered in the ancient Bryan language to start the recording. While he added date and time, which the crystal ball was unable to track, he began to record the looks of the withered area. He didn't need the academy to know how early he was planning to complete the mission. There were a ton of things he wanted to do these next few years. Chapter 74. With an improved spell model of the Point Me spell, he could use it to track beings even slightly stronger than him. He had already experimented with it in the One Piece world, and while he had no problem tracking inanimate objects, living beings or powerful objects were a different matter. The AI chip had helped him figure out the true mechanics of the spell and optimized the spell model so he could use it to its limit. It was a form of information-based division, just like the scratching spell in the ancient language. The more the user knew about the target, the easier it was to track it with the mechanics of the spell. At least you need to know the very basics, enough to be able to identify a specific target. Something like a random gold coin wouldn't work. It has to be a specific gold coin, with, for example, a scratch in it. But that was only a part of it. If the target had at least a partial consciousness, it could resist the tracking. This was purely dependent on the strength difference between the user and the target. For example, a mythical devil fruit like the Hito Hito no Mi model Nika was strong enough to resist his tracking through scrying and Point Me. But other devil fruits weren't. His theory was that the will of the target was also an additional matter. The Hito Hito no Mi model Nika was probably aware that it was waiting for Luffy and didn't want to be found by him. While other fruits, if they were aware, didn't really care. Maybe they could resist him too. At least that fact told him one thing. Devil fruits are beyond the level of a rank 3 being, the level he was certain he could track. Well, the Hito Hito no Mi model Nika at least. His current tracking target was fortunately unable to hide from him. It was barely a rank 1 being, and he had no chance in resisting his attempts to find it. This track led him deeper into the dark night woods, and he felt the vitality and force of the forest around him reducing. He knew the creature responsible for this was able to devour life. More and more dried and withered plants filled the woods around him. When he grabbed some of them, they crumbled into white dust, having lost all the water inside of them. Warning! Mutated organisms ahead. It directly rushed out of the woods at him. This creature resembles a lizard. Its skin is yellowish in color with 4 legs, a snake-like tongue, and horns. White fangs littered its jaw as the tongue was flying at Harry. Having expected such an attack, Harry just raised his hand, and a wall of sickly and vile-looking greenish-black flames appeared in front of him, turning the tongue as soon as it touched the flames into ashes. A combination of a fireball spell model with fiend fire and death element particles is quite powerful. Harry muttered as he observed the effect of his spell before waving his hand at the creature, and the flames compressed into a blade-like shape, flying at the creatures. It had no chance to react. The flame's intense heat burned straight through it, splitting it in half. As soon as it hit the dirt, dead, the corpse began to wither and collapse inward. Scales continuously fell off, littering the ground. The blood evaporated quickly. Within minutes, only a white skeleton and some yellow scales remained on the ground. Anything that remained, like the bones, was brittle and turned to dust with a tiny bit of pressure. Askin with the help of the AI chip confirmed the presence of a small pathogen on the corpse that had caused the effect. He cleansed his hands with magic and collected a bit of the bones with a levitation charm into some flasks for later studying. It was at that moment that blood-red veins came out of the remains and shaped a small creature. These veins were trying the same with the materials Harry had just collected, but they couldn't break through the magically strengthened containers. Even incomplete, the small creature was quite fast, but Harry could easily keep up with it and followed it deeper into the woods, where his Point Me spell had already been leading him. That creature is some kind of parasite that had taken control over another creature. It's probably returning to its origin. He followed it deeper into the withered woods, all the way towards a hole leading into the depths. While at the entrance a grown man had to crouch, deeper into it became more spacious so that multiple people could walk side by side. Here a new spell model based on the Lumos charm came in useful. For this one, Harry had been inspired by the candlelight spell from the Elder Scrolls series. It creates a small sphere of light, illuminating his surroundings while following him around. Nothing more than a rank 0 spell model, but hella useful for this kind of situation. Deeper inside, the natural presence of darkness elements became stronger. He knew that the creature inside was a darkness elemental creature, so it's natural that it lives in a place with a high concentration of that element. After all, this whole encounter belongs to a main character. A location left behind by a powerful ancient magus that gives the MC a path forward. The plot armor he was leeching off. He wanted this mission exactly because of what was hidden here. Even if the mission would have been already gone, he would have come here either way. Following the correct path and dodging the traps the creature had prepared to protect its lair, Harry soon arrived at his goal. A large underground cave, the ceiling littered with stalactites and flash jellyfish, a creature that could emanate light. It was filled with a horde of different mutated creatures, bears, lizards, and wolves, all controlled by the very same parasites he had followed here. And in the center was a massive yellow snake, resting there like a king attended by its servants that were guarding it. Great withering snake Mancastra, half-adult body, strength, 11.9, agility, 6.5, vitality, 14, spiritual force, 8. Abilities. Parasitic. A Mangstra can develop an extremely potent parasite within its body, spreading it to other organisms and converting them into its underlings. Wither. Any area a Mangstra traverses will see its plant life die and transform into nutrients for the creature. An adult Mangstra, possessing the strength of an official magus, can reduce an entire forest to withering ashes. Source: Nigel's Travels. In its adult form, it would have been on the level of a rank 1 magus, but still no threat for Harry. This one, not even an adult, is just stronger than a rank 3 acolyte. Quickly he was surrounded by small greenish-black fireballs that each flew at one of the creatures controlled by a parasite, killing them with one attack. Enraged, the snake coiled in the center, hissing at him as it readied itself to attack him. It didn't realize that Harry was vastly stronger, even with his natural instincts. The multitude of concealment spells he had put on himself concealing his strength were working nicely. With red flashes headed towards the massive snake, as a multitude of energy projectiles hit it all over its body. Inside its opened jaw, its eyes on its nose, in between the gaps of its scales. Every weak point was targeted by one of these spells. Seconds later, the snake didn't move anymore. But it was still alive. These had been stunners. Well, that's done. He muttered as he levitated the corpse of the snake behind him. Without the Mangstra consciousness, the parasites were not moving from the littered carcasses all around the cave. As soon as the snake was safely behind him, he sent off a wave of fire, burning all the corpses inside the cave. He had already gathered a bit of material for research and held the origin of these parasites in his possession. There was no need for them to remain here and risk them helping the snake in the future. The Mangstra snake was also good enough to study. After all, it was related to the advanced meditation technique the MC had used in the original story. It should give him a few useful insights in his research towards these meditation techniques. Especially towards the bloodline-based warlock meditation techniques. While it was a mutated and heavily experimented on creature, there had to be at least a bit of data he could gain from it. This snake was after all experimented on for research on how to advance a bloodline by a powerful bloodline magus. In the magus world exist many paths to higher power with their scientific methods, however they gained it, they had found many approaches to advance their personal strength. The path of the magus was the most common one, basically a pure magic user, though there exist countless various magus meditation techniques in the magus world. But there exist also countless subtypes beyond the common magus type, which were also magi overall, but their paths are a bit more specific. One of them is the warlock type. A warlock is a magus that has absorbed the bloodline of a creature as the base of his power. They are also referred to as bloodline warlock. There are many advantages, like a higher natural strength, no requirements for innate spells since they come from the abilities of the creature they used themselves, a longer lifespan, and so on. It had also some strict restrictions. For example, unlike the purebloods in the wizarding world, a warlock could indeed be called a pureblood. The purer their bloodlines are, the easier their path to advancement becomes. Warlocks put a lot of importance on bloodlines, for a valid reason. With an impure bloodline, it would only represent a lesser-leveled creature, while a pure one represents a high-leveled one. For example, the Mangstra snake he just captured is only a rank 1 creature, a very low-level bloodline, but its ancestors were more powerful and had a higher ranking. Like the black coral snake, a rank 3 bloodline, or the giant Chemoian serpent, a rank 4 bloodline, were both ancestors of the Manxtra snake. The problem with the bloodline warlock is that they were bound to the bloodline they had used, which limits their strength to their bloodline's strength. They could reach the strength of their bloodline easily, even by doing nothing, no training or meditation needed, and they would reach the maximal level of it by just aging. But it was impossible with their original bloodline to reach a level beyond its natural limits. Instead, they would need to transform their bloodline to a higher ranked one. Unfortunately, this wasn't Pokemon, creatures didn't just evolve. This was called bloodline shackles, the limitation of every warlock, forever bound to the strength of the bloodline they had used to become a warlock. Well, of course there were exceptions. Warlocks were extremely hierarchical based on their bloodlines. After all, the higher-ranked bloodline of each branch had instinctive control over all lower-ranked ones. Snake-type bloodlines were extremely widespread in the multiverse, but they all led to one being called Snake Dowager. The supposed origin of all snake bloodlines in this multiverse. She wasn't bound to the bloodline shackles and had control over all snakes or snake-type warlocks, neither was she limited by the natural strength of her bloodline, she could just like a Magus advance as far as she had resources to. Why was he explaining all this randomly in his head? Well, the Manxtra snake is a bloodline experiment. An research subject of a warlock with the giant Chemoian serpent bloodline, who had tried to evolve this Manxtra snake in order to one day break through his own bloodline shackles and evolve his own bloodline. In the cave system was not only the lair of that snake, but further down was a large black granite boulder. Chapter 75. It looked like a normal but massive granite rock. But the strange thing is that, unlike the rest of the cave system, it emitted no radiation at all, not even the slightest bit. Like some areas in the Abyssal Bone Forest Academy that were specifically warded. This rock was created by a defensive spell formation, meant to protect the laboratory that was hidden behind it. The very laboratory where the Manxtra snake has escaped from recently, causing a mission to be issued in the Academy. Which meant the spell formation was no longer as powerful. If it was at full power, even Harry, with his strength around rank 2 to rank 3, would be very careful. After all, this laboratory didn't just belong to a random Magus. It belonged to the great Magus Sirholm, a rank 4 Magus, or rather bloodline warlock, possessing the bloodline of the great Cheoman serpent. But it has been centuries since this laboratory had been abandoned, time had worn down the spell formation. Even Leyland Farlier, who had been a rank 2 acolyte at that time, managed to break it with the help of the AI chip. Leyland had needed days to completely analyze the formation. Harry, with his far higher mental capacity and stronger soul, was far faster. He quickly found the weaknesses in the formation that had formed as time eroded its power away and precisely targeted them simultaneously with a few blasting spells. Boom! The granite boulder changed, forming a black hole, a tunnel. Without hesitation, he walked inside, facing the first line of defense. As childish laughter resounded around him, the stone slates below his feet twisted, revealing a mouth filled with razor-sharp teeth, snapping at Harry. This was an enchanted object called a gnawing slate, a popular defense for hidden laboratories amongst magi. Before it could even reach him, it stopped midway, a golden glow surrounding it. Not so fast. Harry said, his hand stretched out as he made a movement as if he were squeezing something. It was a spell that he created out different telekinetic wizarding charms, like Arresto Momentum or Wingardium Leviosa, allowing him to immobilize and move a target or even put pressure on it. The slate began screaming as it grew two small legs and tried to reach the ground and run away. But it was no use. Harry directly pressed hard enough to destroy it, putting the remains into his inventory for later research. These defenses were not really powerful, even Leyland, before becoming a Magus, had managed to bypass them. The goal of them was more concealing the existence of this lab instead of keeping away powerful enemies. For Harry, it was like a walk in the park, allowing him to collect some materials that were originally meant to attack him and keep him out, like devil vines and bone-eating flowers. Along the way, he even carefully collected a black diary belonging to an acolyte that had found this place and a simple-looking yellow bronze ring. He smirked as he stored it inside of his inventory. He arrived at the end of the tunnel, a villa. A full villa is magically concealed in this cave system. Unfortunately, the villa itself was mostly empty since the great Magus Sirholm abandoned this place during his lifetime. The most valuable things were the actual defenses. Besides some notes left behind by another acolyte that had found this place, there was nothing noteworthy. And he already knew roughly what was inside that diary. Luckily, there was still the lab itself. The entrance to it was located in a wardrobe on the first floor of the villa. It should be stuck to the wall, but probably the escape of the Mangstra snake had caused a small crack that revealed a passage behind it. It led below the villa and was probably around 3 to 4 times as big as the area above. His light spell revealed an incubator area filled with broken glass domes and many rotten eggs. All these eggs belonged to snake-type creatures, and the escape of the Mangstra snake had destroyed them. Which was too bad, they were mostly rotten eggs now, being unusable for any experiments. The whole laboratory was filled with tools and machines related to biological experimentation, but Time and the Mangstra snake didn't leave them in a good state. Still, he made sure to record all of them with the AI chip. He also took everything with him that was just broken. Reparo for the win. But it wasn't much. Sir Holm had really taken everything of value with him. Once he reached the final area, it was as if he had triggered some kind of chain reaction. A gust of wind turned into a whirlwind and grew larger and larger until a translucent human figure formed in its center. How many years has it been already? Finally, I catch the scent of a living human. The translucent figure seemed to gasp, revealing a faint, elderly visage. A ghost, similar to the ones he knew from the wizarding world. Though it resembled more Peeves, the poltergeist gave a stronger presence, being able to affect the world around it. A few centuries more or less. Harry replied to the ghost's question while observing it closely, analyzing its presence with different analysis spells he had created. This ghost was more than an imprint of a soul, like in the wizarding world, it was actually a real spiritual body powered by a soul. It had a full soul, not just an imprint. To learn the real difference between a ghost in the wizarding world and this one, he would have to return to it in the future. Yes, it was a long time. The ghost moaned, "You are quite polite, young one." "Oh, thank you. Proper decorum is quite important to me. You see, I am kind of a noble and a ruler, it wouldn't fit for me to seem impolite. Especially to someone like you who is no threat to me." Harry smiled. "What? How dare you? I am a great mag. An acolyte. Precisely the owner of this diary." He pulled the black diary out he had found on the dead body at the entrance. "I must say you look much nicer as a ghost than a skeleton, Roman." Not even bothering with trying to trick him or questioning how Harry knew his name, the ghost of this acolyte attacked him in rage. But if there was one topic Harry had a deep understanding of, then it was souls. The Abyssal Bone Forest Academy's main area of research was necromancy and souls. And more importantly, he had paid a heavy price for all the knowledge of the FMA world, including a deep understanding of souls and Philosopher's Stones. Using one of the Philosopher's Stones in his possession, he directly trapped the enraged ghost inside. Once inside of a Philosopher's Stone, a soul could only get free with the help of someone using the stone, even a highly independent ghost. "Hey! That's new," Harry muttered as he looked at the Philosopher's Stone in his hand. It had changed slightly, instead of just the blood-red color, there was now a bluish-white dot on it. "No, time for that now. Here I am boasting about my knowledge of souls, and my first interaction with one in another world leaves already a question for me. I will have to take a closer look later," he muttered before he put the stone back into his inventory. After making sure he had everything, he left the villa. Leyland was right, and most of the things in the villa were worthless. Harry hadn't wanted to believe it and took a detailed look at it himself, but found nothing of interest. Well, he had what he needed with Roman's spirit, his diary, and the bronze ring. Time to return to Endless Night City. Viscount Jackson POV. A tall and burly man sitting behind a desk in a luxuriously designed office sighed deeply as he read through the most recent reports. This is Viscount Jackson, the ruler of Extreme Night City in the Eastern Province. Ruling in this world was an extremely tiresome task. A truth he had been aware of since he was a child, and his father had shared with him the facts about the true powers of the world, like his father did with him before him. Even as noble rulers as Viscounts of the Poolfield Kingdom, they were at the bottom of the pole. Like for them, it was no different for the royal family. The true powers in the Poolfield Kingdom no, the whole world were the Magus. In fact, the royal family was just a discarded branch from one of the Magus families that belonged to the organization that ruled over the territory that the kingdom belonged to. A few talentless descendants had gained another duty. His own personal strength, being a full-blown Grand Knight, was worth it in the face of beings that could manipulate nature himself. But still, as long as they performed their duty and paid their taxes while ruling well over their territory, they had no danger to fear from the more powerful Magus organizations in the south coast. They usually left the normal humans alone. After all, they still needed them for new recruits. And they even help with troubles in the kingdom. Like his most recent troubles, the withering woods around Extreme Night City were destroying a growing part of the city's economy. He already sent a request for help to the royal family, which had contacted the true rulers of the Poolfield Kingdom, the Abyssal Bone Forest Academy. Hopefully they would arrive soon, though he knew they had their own speed. Still, being under the protection of Magi didn't mean they could be careless. While most of the stronger Magi belonged to an organization that left regular humans alone, there were a lot of the weaker ones, called acolytes, that roamed these lands freely. It was rare that they caused trouble, but as long as they don't disrupt the peace in the kingdom, they hadn't to fear anything from the organization protecting the kingdom. They didn't care about the humans themselves, just the steady supply of recruits and taxes. That's why every noble had to be careful and monitor their territories carefully. Knock, knock. Come in. The Viscount called out, his head raising from the report in his hands. The door opened, and a grey-robed person entered the room. His face was half hidden by a hood that he lifted, revealing the face of a half-beastman. One of the people Jackson had spent quite a bit of effort recruiting. He was not only a half-beast with a higher natural strength than humans but also a wandering acolyte. A rank 2 acolyte. You are back. How is it? Did you manage to find out who these newcomers are and what they want in Extreme Night City? Jackson asked directly, coming to the point. Today a relative big group of newcomers entered the city and set up in one of the inns. They had quite a few armed men with them, but were led by a girl. According to the innkeeper, they follow someone called Lord Potter who hasn't arrived yet. I still felt prudent to report to you. While I couldn't figure out their intentions, they are strong. All of them are at least on the knight level. 2 of them are not weaker than yourself. That girl is also an acolyte. He explained gravely, there is no way, this Lord Potter is just an ordinary human with such a followership. This could become troublesome. If they were just passing through or even here to live peacefully, it would be no problem, even welcome in making Extreme Night City safer, by adding additional strength to suppressing the criminals in the city. But if they were here to cause trouble, it would be troublesome. These numbers and their strength made it already the strongest individual faction in the city. Knights were rare, he himself had only a handful in his employ. Grand Knights were usually only found in larger noble families, and acolytes were hard to recruit. Suddenly he was pulled out of his thoughts as a voice that shouldn't be here talked. Ah, both of you are here. How convenient. It belonged to a well-dressed boy with dark hair, a strangely beautiful otherworldly look, and green eyes. Everything about this person screamed danger in Viscount Jackson's head. Still, he was a noble and asked calmly, who are you? How did you get in here? You were just talking about me. I am Harry Potter from the Abyssal Bone Forest Academy. I came here for 2 things. Firstly, I have taken care of the cause for the Withering Woods. The boy said with a smile, while the half-beastman stood protectively beside Jackson already. This is a relief. Do you need something from me as proof that you completed the mission before you return? Jackson asked as one headache had solved itself. Oh, I won't be returning for a while. The Academy is in the middle of a war, and I am one of its talents they want to protect. I will remain here for a while. Ah, I see. You want my help with accommodations. Jackson realized relieved that it wasn't a fight he wanted. You could say that. A nice place you have here. The boy Harry said cryptically as his eyes glowed in their emerald color. Sorry, about that. It's nothing personal. But I won't stay in a villa if I can have a palace. And I will need control over the city too. Before Jackson comprehended what the boy just said, his companion had already moved, attacking the boy, who only said, Imperio. A red glowing light hit the half-beastman as strange red symbols appeared all over his body. But Jackson had no time to think and moved himself, only to be hit by the very same light, and the world began to feel strange. Imperio. Chapter 76. Harry Potter POV. That's the life. He thought as he was enjoying his breakfast. Celeste sat on the very same table, enjoying her own breakfast as they were served by the maids of Viscount Jackson's household. While Celeste is supposed to be his maid, she could be considered more of a personal assistant handling organizational matters so he could have more time. Sir. The door to the dining room opened, and the Viscount himself entered. The party you told me to look out for has entered the city. Hearing him, his smile widened as he ordered, Good, I hope your men are leading them here. Yes, as you instructed, they have immediately greeted them and are leading them here this moment. Viscount Jackson replied politely. Good, you may leave. Notify me once they have arrived. Harry ordered, dismissing the Viscount in his own home. The man accepted it without questions and left under the strange gazes of his own household maids, who were still present, ready to serve. While many of them and even the other people in the household were questioning what was happening here, in the end they had to accept it. After all, the rest of the Viscount family, the head butler and the head guards after all did so too under the Imperius. The rest of you may leave too. I have matters to discuss with Celeste. He ordered, dismissing the maids. As soon as they were out, Celeste asked him, did you force them under a contract? No, the maids are completely free. As for the Viscount, the high-ranking members of the family are under a spell that I have improved. Harry answered as he took a sip of his coffee, the Viscount probably would rather die than sign such a contract. And I have no interest in having permanently in my employ. He is just temporary, a means to an end. You have to teach me that spell. Celeste said with glittering eyes and a sadistic look on her face. Yup, she is still a spoiled noble, even as his maid. It is more advantageous to focus on different spell models. They take a bit of time to understand, and this one is useless against most acolytes since their mental resistances are too strong and they will manage to break free. Any acolyte who doesn't break free isn't worth the effort. Harry explained. While this was an improved version of the Imperius curse, placing a permanent rune brand on a person makes it stronger. Anyone becoming an acolyte had already a natural resistance against magic, negating the rune brand, and the Imperius curse itself could be broken with a strong enough will. The main training method in becoming a magus was developing one's mind. Then why did you learn it? I created it. I see. So who are these people that did arrive? Celeste asked interestingly, she hadn't learned much about himself yet. The other members of my organization, you will see for yourself. They should be here soon. Anyway, did you manage to buy every apothecary and fruit producer in the city? He asked. Yes, I did. A bit of assistance from the Viscount, and they sold them to me for a reasonable price. While I get that you want the apothecaries for the ingredients you use in your potions, but are fruit potion ingredients too? She questioned, a bit puzzled. They may be. But I wanted them for a different reason. You will see. Harry answered, and Celeste just accepted his reply. She knew he wouldn't share more with her until he felt it was the right time. Soon there was a knock on the door to the dining room, and Viscount Jackson led 3 women in. Finally, Basida, Neela, and Bicky. It took you long enough. Harry greeted them. This is Celeste, a new recruit and my maid. She is mainly responsible for organizational matters. Harry stood up to greet them and received kisses from each of the girls as soon as he was in their range under the watchful eyes of Celeste. You seem to have been busy. Neela said as she still in his embrace and looked at Neela. Nice to meet you, Celeste. A cute outfit you are wearing there. This made Celeste blush. She was wearing a skimpy black and white outfit with frills, something Harry would call a French maid outfit. It's one of the uniforms Harry ordered me to wear. Harry ordered you to wear something like this? Basida asked as her eyes predatorily returned to Harry. Nothing that you are thinking of happened. I will not force myself on her, and like with yourself, she needs to be 18 for me to interfere with her. Harry cut her train of thought directly off. I just like the look of it. So you like the look of these kinds of clothes? Bicky asked, interested. He calls them French maid outfit, though I have no idea what French are. Celeste replied. All 3 newcomers stared at the outfit, while Viscount Jackson stood unmovingly in the corner. Anyway, you may leave, Jackson. Harry ordered, before he turned his gaze onto the girls. How was your journey? I didn't expect you to arrive together. We coincidentally met up with Neela outside of the Dark Night Woods. Bicky replied happily as she took an apple from the table filled with different foods. While these weren't the spiritual-grade foods beneficial for a magus that were available in the academy, it was still quite the luxurious collection fitting for a noble household. Lucky for you. But you were no longer in danger. I already took care of the mission. It was a half-adult Manxtra snake that had caused the Withering Woods. Harry gave them a short overview before asking, how was your journey? They had managed their goal, selling every potion they had with them, bringing some of the ingredients they had on their list, and most importantly, finding as many magus markets in the Poolfield Kingdom as possible. Every region of the kingdom had at least one. Good, I am happy that you have arrived safely. This entire floor is for our personal use. The Viscount's family was so gracious and moved to one of the lower ones. The only people allowed to enter are the maids and Viscount Jackson himself. You can pick any room you want, though I have already guessed which one you will pick. Still, you will need your own laboratory. Harry explained, already knowing they would move into his bedroom. They would have a lot of work in front of them, while he had already begun with his more in-depth research, especially studying Roman's soul, which had caused a different color in his Philosopher's Stone. But to really start with his research, there was one thing he had to do first. Harry stood on the edge of a cliff, looking out into the wild ocean. He was surrounded by a field of yellow flowers. The hearts of these flowers were filled with a bright red. These flowers, while blooming, were almost the size of 2 human fists. The whole top of the cliff was filled with these flowers, their aroma filling the area. Their name is Beta Daisy. It's located in the Zither Moon Mountain Plains, quite a dangerous place, even moderately dangerous for an average rank 1 magus. What made this place even more troublesome to reach was its geographical location. Not only had he to pass through the whole Poolfield Kingdom again, thank God he still had his firebolt and travels alone, it was also located in between the Abyssal Bone Forest Academy and Sage Gotham's hut, who were at war with each other. He had to avoid multiple parties of magi from each faction since he didn't want to get their attention. No doubt he could fight them head-on, but it would be troublesome, and he wanted to remain unbothered in this place. For this purpose, his good old invisibility cloak came in really handy. Combined with a few spells, it pretty much concealed his presence from anyone on the south coast. Nobody could see through his invisibility cloak, neither himself. Based on his initial research with the AI chip, while it was not an offensive or defensive item, it was a supportive one, at the very least on the level of a high-grade magical artifact, if not higher. It was far too complex for him to really learn its inner workings at this point in time. He simply lacked the understanding and knowledge and the tools to really study it. Which made him wonder if there was more to the story of the 3 brothers in the wizarding world, explaining the origin of the Deathly Hallows. Was death a real entity that could think? According to his old system, it should be. After all, he had gotten a mission that decreased his affection for death if he failed. Was that mission still active? Probably better if he completes it, no need to piss off a higher entity like death. He probably had already pissed off one of them by accidentally removing his old system. Whatever kind of entity the shadow was. Every time he thinks about him now, it gives him a dangerous feeling, but while he had his old system, nothing had felt wrong. Which was fishy. Well, he met another higher entity too. Truth. Who had sent him here? Truth clearly was posed to the being that had given him his system. The whole multiverse was far too complex. Especially with higher entities, whose ranges reach beyond their own universes. Just how do they scale up to a rank 8 magus, the current peak of this universe? Death is probably far stronger, since she exists in pretty much every universe. About the shadow, he had no guess at all, he wasn't even sure who or what that shadow was or which universe it comes from. Truth may be on the level of a rank 8 magus, but probably higher. Rank 8 magi, at least to what he knew from the novel, couldn't travel between universes, just worlds, while Truth sent him here. It didn't matter for now. One thing was obvious, there were some kind of rules or limitations in place for directly interfering with lesser beings. Or the shadow wouldn't have used the system on him for some reason, Death would collect the Deathly Hallows herself, or Truth would just have killed him. Right now, they didn't matter to him. Sure, he had to keep them in mind, but there was nothing he could truly do about them at his current level. First he had to get home. For that, he also needed more strength. That's why he was here in the first place. The entrance to Dylan's Gardens, the last place where the great Magus Sirholm had lived after moving away from his secret laboratory close to Extreme Night City. He plucked one of the beta daisies out of the earth and went over to the edge of the cliff. And jumped. Was he trying to kill himself? After all, at the bottom of the cliff waited sharp rocks for him. Entering Dylan's garden had been accompanied by a riddle in the original story. While he didn't possess the original map with the ridge, he still knew the information. To enter the secret plane, a pocket dimension created by Magi, one needed courage and respect. The beta daisy represents respect and the jump from the cliff represents courage. As he fell, the wind pressed against him, but it didn't affect him strongly thanks to his powerful constitution. Harry fell and fell, until suddenly a circle of light appeared, swallowing him. Chapter 77. The light circled around him as he began to feel weightless and the earth spinned around him. This strange feeling lasted until Harry landed a bit roughly inside of a dark cave. Still standing firmly on his feet, he activated his lighting spell, illuminating his surroundings. This is the old base of the so-called Great Magus Surholm, located inside a secret plane. A secret plane is a pocket dimension used by my magi to cultivate all kinds of resources. A secret plane is anchored to one or more places in the real world and can be customized to fit different climates and situations. They could come in all kinds of sizes, but of course the amount of resources needed to create them increases exorbitantly with the size. Still an extremely useful type of magic that he absolutely wanted to get his hands on in the future. Dylan's Garden was the first secret plane he could take an actual look at, but of course first he would need to complete his main goal without destroying it. But it doesn't hurt to let the AI chip analyze his surroundings with different scanning spells while he works on his task. Just in case. In front of him on the cave floor, he spotted a roundish track, a small grin formed at the edge of his mouth. Objective number 1 spotted. It was the track of a snake that he decided to follow. And he hadn't to wait long until he heard its hissing. "Ci! Ci!" A gigantic, long black shape rushed towards him out of the darkness. Harry was ready for it and didn't even need to dodge. Gleipnir's grasp. He called out like an cringy anime protagonist, but if he came up with a cool name based on Norse mythology, he was going to use it. After all, nobody was here seeing it. Tough it doesn't feel that way. Many black glowing chains shaped out of the ground around the snake, winding around it like hundreds of small snakes attacking a much larger one. Each of these chains was covered with red glowing runes that formed different bindings, paralyzing and weakening spells while also strengthening the chain itself. One of the results of his recent research into the limited knowledge he had in ancient runes. A combination that used the principles of spell models, transfiguration, and runes. While most magical beings had an innate resistance to magic, the spells were woven into the chains themselves, using them as catalysts, a good solution to bypass the resistance slightly. The chains are working and captured the snake, effectively restraining it from moving. But he couldn't underestimate that particular snake. It's a black horror snake after all, a creature able to reach the strength of a rank 3 magus. Someone like the current Harry would have trouble to face. His mental stats may be in the same range, but his actual strength was lower since he lacked the advantages a rank 3 magus possessed, thanks to his systematic cultivation. And strictly speaking, Harry was just in the lower levels of a rank 3 magus. Specifically for it, he made some preparations before he came here, since he already knew what was waiting for him in here. Harry pulled a clear-looking potion with a pale lilac hue out of his inventory and threw it directly into the struggling snake's mouth. The flask containing it shattered as the black horror snake bit it, and the potions flowed into the wild animal mouth. A few moments later, the snake stopped struggling, seemingly dead. Of course it wasn't dead, all its vital functions were still working. This potion is based on a recipe that he would have learned in his 6th year in Hogwarts that he found amongst Sirius notes. Of course he didn't have the necessary ingredients to brew it, but he managed to develop a working version even more potent with the ingredients available in the Abyssal Bone Forest Academy during his experiments. While the black horror snake was in a death-like state, its body was still fully working. A perfect state for harvesting renewable ingredients, like its blood. He would need a ton of it after all. Just to make sure he placed more sleeping spells on it and chains before putting it into his inventory. After all, at its full strength, it would be stronger than him, it just doesn't have enough nourishment in here, which let it weaken over the centuries. Or this whole thing would have been much harder. Having secured the snake, he carefully headed deeper into the secret plane, recording all the data around him and studying the spells that made up this whole place. He moved through another tunnel made of a strange metal, which of course he collected some samples off. The metal is so-called crying blood alloy, an alloy once again showing how dark the Magus world truly is. One requirement for its creation was the fresh blood of slaves or beasts. With a few samples, he should be able to recreate it. It's a metal that can affect spiritual beings like ghosts. It never hurts to have something like this. At the end of the tunnel, he arrived in a wider area that was filled with a sea of flowers. All kinds of rare flowers and herbs that are supposed to have died out in the south coast or were particularly rare. Their plants were the reason why this place was called Dylan's Garden, though he had no idea who the hell Dylan was. It never has been explained in the story. Just some random ass name that has been picked. But Harry didn't touch any of these plants yet. He knew they would trigger a trap. Instead, he decided to first calmly analyze the spell formations around the flowers. With his high-speed processing power, he is able to dispel the traps around them without triggering them. It's obvious that this whole thing was far too easy for him. After all, this whole place was designed to test a successor, who was worthy to receive the inheritance of a rank 4 magus like the great magus Sirholm. Such a successor would be only an acolyte, not someone with the power of a fully fledged magus. He already found a different set of spell formations that would attack and kill any magus entering this place. Probably the true reason why it hasn't been plundered yet after centuries. Once he had carefully collected all the rare flowers and herbs in this place, he was ready to head towards the next part. Through large wooden double doors and arrived in a massive study. There was another tunnel heading towards somewhere else, but Harry already knew at the end was the place with the trap that would have been triggered by the flowers. All 4 walls of the lavishly decorated study were filled with bookshelves. Strangely, there was not a single book in them. Once again, Sirholm removed all of them, ensuring that no one would get their hands on them, only leaving behind what he wanted. Stingy old magus. In the center was a large table with a well-crafted black box placed on it. Behind it was a chair, and on the wall directly behind that chair was an oil painting showing a unique symbol. A snake made out of countless runes that was biting its own tail, forming a circle. Quite similar to the symbol that Lust had above her large breast. Ouroboros is a symbol depicting infinity. Or in this case, emblem of the Ouroboros clan, a faction present in the central continent, the most prosperous and wealthiest area in the Magus world, where most major factions were present. The clan to which the great Magus Sirholm had belonged. Anyone who didn't know what was going on would directly go for the black box, open it, and find an exquisite black book inside of it. While Harry had a great interest in that black book, after all it contained something he had wanted for a long time. Spell models native to the Magus world, beyond rank 0. Ones that he didn't create himself with knowledge from other worlds and actual reference to stronger spells. To be precise, there were 12 rank 1 spell models and 3 rank 2 spell models. Which was not much since he could create rank 3 spell models and even self-destruct rank 4 ones. But they were based on completely different principles than his own. It also contains quite a lot of information on Sirholm's travels and many experiments that would also come useful at some point, giving Harry a better idea about the Magus world itself. The information available in the Academy was limited, and while he knew a lot about the Magus world in general terms, like a reader of a story, he lacked true, in-depth information. Alone finding the exact location of this place had been troublesome, since he had nothing more than a few names and a description without the map that Leyland had in the original story through another acolyte. Sirholm was in fact a right bastard. If one were to pick up that book, one would find a message right at the bottom of the box originally covered by the book, telling one that the whole plane will collapse in a while. While the book doesn't contain what one was truly looking for. The advanced meditation technique, Chemoyan's pupil. A warlock meditation technique that lets one use the bloodline of that very black horror snake he captured at the entrance to become a magus. A Capabale acolyte is able to purify the blood of the black horror snake since it contains traces of its parent species, the giant Chemoyan serpent. This serpent is a rank 4 creature, the very same bloodline Sirholm had used to become rank 4. That's why Harry had wanted that snake alive. After all, while it lived, it could produce more blood. Ignoring the box for now, he directly headed towards the portrait and studied it. The runes making up the Ouroboros symbol, where the riddle had hidden the true advanced meditation technique. But he could detect more spells around it. This portrait was also the very core of the secret plane, controlling all of it. These spells were extremely complex, it would take a long time to decipher them at his current level since they were all rank 4. Time that he didn't want to spend here. Maybe he could leave the black book behind and return later for it. For now, he just needed the meditation technique. Harry pulled the bronze ring out of his pocket. This ring was the reason why he had first to travel through the entirety of the Poolfield Kingdom before returning back, passing the Academy in the completely opposite direction. It was the trigger to activate the riddle in the oil painting, stupid ring. Harry muttered, still annoyed by the fact that he had to get it first. The ring was hot, the closer he was to the painting, the hotter it got. Right in front of it, at the bottom of the painting, a hole opened, having the same symbol as the ring on it. It fitted perfectly. As soon as he activated the riddle, an ancient voice resounded, an observant one has arrived. Not even activating the self-destruction sequence. Too bad, I will do it for you. You have 3 hours to finish the test, it has begun. Begin to portray this spell formation within 30 seconds. Oh, you fucking asshole. Harry cursed as he began to work through the tests. That stingy old bastard wouldn't leave a secret plane for him that he could study or use as a secret base. He would remember that. Harry completed the test without troubles. After all, Leyland had managed it as an acolyte, and his AI chip was far more powerful than Leyland's one back then. My inheritor. You must have the courage and wisdom, be astute and filled with knowledge. Only then can you break through the bloodline shackles. As soon as he was done, the voice once again resounded, telling him about the bloodline shackles every warlock was limited by and the dream of Sir Holm in breaking them. Of course Harry was planning to break through them, but not because it was that stingy asshole's dream. Right after the message, he received the information about the advanced meditation technique. The original version had 4 levels, allowing one to reach rank 4. He only received 3 because that stingy bastard wanted him to go to the Ouroboros clan in the future. Without wasting time, he grabbed that black book and returned through the corridor towards the exit, Stereo-Guderian. This was the password left behind in that black book, called the Book of Giant Serpent. Although Harry hadn't read that book yet, thanks to the AI chip, he remembered it from reading Warlock of the Magus World. In a red flash, he arrived at the top of the cliff, from which he had jumped off. Chapter 78. Murphy POV. Brilliant rays of sunlight lit up the path with a beautiful golden light as Murphy stared tuftfully out of the window. He is dressed in his formal attire, his trusty black cane in his hand, as the luxurious carriage driven by his servant rolled deeper into the city. The current atmosphere made a truly beautiful sight outside of his window. But Murphy is unable to truly enjoy it. Other things are plaguing his mind. For some reason, he had this strange gut feeling. It started with the arrival of a specific group in Extreme Night City. A group filled with knights and even great knights not weaker than the city lord himself. According to the information Murphy managed to gather, there was even an acolyte amongst that group. He even managed to take a look at her, but she had only recently broken into the level of a rank 2 acolyte. Nothing he had to fear, even with the few spell models he could use in his current state, he could take care of a freshly advanced acolyte. Still, there was this strange gut feeling. If he were younger, he probably would have packed his things and left from Extreme Night City. Unfortunately, he was too old now. He had built a comfortable life for himself here, having long since given up on the chance to become a magus. Instead, he had decided to pursue his scholarly interests and the luxuries of mortal life itself. Even if he was targeted by some different party, he had not much of a real interest in other acolytes beyond his knowledge. And he probably was overthinking things. After all, that group had become personal guests of Viscount Jackson himself. It should be fine. We have arrived, sir. His servant called out from the driver's seat. Murphy had been so deep in thought that he had missed the fact that they had already arrived at the Viscount's castle. The castle was right in the heart of Extreme Night City, guarded by the personal guards of Viscount Jackson himself, the Black Iron Guards. I probably won't be out for too long today. So be ready in case you need to depart. Murphy ordered just in case he needed to make a quick escape as he stepped out of the carriage. In his vicinity were several other horse carriages, as gentlemen in lavish attire and ladies in ball gowns arrived for the city lord's banquet. Murphy, old friend. You finally arrived. A familiar voice called out. Viscount Jackson personally arrived to greet him. Little Jackson, it's good to see you. Is everything fine with you? Murphy asked, taking a close look at the person opposite him but not noticing anything wrong. It sure is. Why are you asking, old friend? I was a bit worried for one of my smartest students. After all, you are currently housing rather unique guests. Murphy pointed out. Ah, you mean Lord Potter and his retinue. You will meet him soon. He is the person who was sent to take care of the Withering Woods. Which he already did. But he needs a place to stay for a while, so I invited him to stay here. Jackson explained honestly. Murphy had heard that the woods around Extreme Night City had begun to recover. It was a great relief for him. He had studied the dried-out plants himself and came to the conclusion that the origin of the threat was beyond his level. Still, it had worried him that the Viscount would one day ask him for help in handling this matter. On one hand, he was indebted to Jackson, who made things in Extreme Night City rather easy for him, and Murphy was rather fond of the man since he had been his student since his youth. But the other side was a threat that could threaten his life. He had been split on that matter. Since you are talking so highly about this new arrival so highly, I can't wait to meet him. Murphy responded now, more calm. It seems his gut feeling was reacting to the true strength of this new arrival. Being able to handle the threat of the Withering Woods made sure this so-called Lord Potter wasn't ordinary. Murphy hadn't even known that there had been another acolyte beyond that woman that had originally led that group. No rumors had spread through the city. Oh, you will quite get along with him. He is very knowledgeable. Quite reminding me of you. In fact, I made sure to prepare a separate hall where your people can gather to socialize amongst themselves for now. Jackson explained as he led him towards another banquet hall than the usual one. Sounds appropriate. It will be a bit more relaxed to talk amongst other athletes at the start. Am I very late? Murphy asked, as he had been rather slow today. Fashionably. Jackson laughed loudly, but you are the last one to arrive. They walked through the lavishly decorated halls of the castle until they arrived at a large pair of massive wooden doors. They are inside. Jackson said, I will leave you here. I still have to take care of the other banquet, the host shouldn't be absent too long. As Jackson left, Murphy turned towards the doors and pushed them open, entering the banquet hall. It was filled with long tables covered in white cloth. On these tables were golden and silver platters filled with various fruits, meats, and other dishes. A huge chandelier hung in the center of the large hall, illuminated by the light of different candles shining through the colored crystals hanging from it. As Jackson had said, all the other acolytes living in Extreme Night City were already present. But the person that caught his eye was standing casually in the center of the hall. He had wild black hair and quite the sharp ethereal look to him. But the most eye-catching feature were the emerald green eyes, which seemed to glow slightly. Nobody was talking to him, for some reason everyone kept their distance from him. The moment Murphy had entered the hall, the youth's eyes landed on him. It felt like the youth saw right through every secret Murphy had. He felt naked. Now that Murphy thought about it. The hall was rather quiet. Usually these acolytes were wilder. And his gut feeling had returned, much stronger than before. But it was too late now. He was in the presence of a predator. The moment he had stepped inside this room, he knew he couldn't escape. Whatever this boy was, he definitely was not a rank 2 acolyte. It seems everyone has arrived, said the boy, seemingly speaking normally, but his voice reached into every corner of the hall. If you didn't learn of me yet, let me introduce myself first. After all, I am the newcomer. He grinned, but nobody was reacting to his joking manner. Everyone felt how dangerous this boy is. Why so tense? Anyways, I am Harry Potter. Currently a rank 2 acolyte from the Abyssal Bone Forest Academy on a mission to take care of the Withering Woods. You may call me Lord Potter. Lord Potter introduced himself. Murphy knew of the Abyssal Bone Forest Academy. It is the organization truly in control of the Poolfield Kingdom. The biggest one in this region. But why was Lord Potter telling them all of this? Even if all of the acolytes present got intimidated by his strength, they still could spread the truth once they were outside, just to take revenge for his arrogant style right now. According to recent intelligence Murphy had gathered, Abyssal Bone Forest Academy was at war with Sage Gotham's hut and Whitewood's castle. Wait, if they left here? This is bad. Murphy noticed that Lord Potter had been observing him and was grinning. Some of you may have already realized, but I have an offer for you. Lord Potter said calmly, an invitation of sorts. Finally someone else managed to talk. It was an acolyte with acne on his face, whose name Murphy had actually forgotten. I have no interest in any invitations. Harry was unimpressed by him. Murphy wasn't surprised. None of the acolytes living in Extreme Night City were particularly talented, most of them wouldn't even become a rank 3 acolyte in their lifetime. In fact, Murphy could be considered the most talented one. He even had a rank 1 spell model, but he never managed to acquire Grine Water to become an official magus. Now he was too old. I said an invitation of sorts. But in fact, you have no choice in the matter. Lord Potter said coldly as his eyes glowed more intensely and strange runes Murphy had never seen before glowed all around the room. Suddenly they were trapped inside of a circle of sickly green and black flames. Murphy was certain he would die if he touched them. Lord Potter was no acolyte, he had to be a magus. Such a feat was beyond any acolyte, no matter the level. They stood no chance. Excuse me, Lord Potter. May I ask exactly what kind of offer you are making us? Murphy right. Lord Potter once again looked at him before nodding approvingly, not bad. The offer is, in fact, more than you ever would have gotten. Even acolytes belonging to the Abyssal Bone Forest Academy would envy you. What could cause acolytes of any bigger organization to be envious? As long as they were smart enough and worked hard, they could get everything to become a rank 3 acolyte. The only thing would be, I am offering every one of you an advanced meditation technique. Lord Potter said with an impish grin. This couldn't be true. What is the catch? Murphy asked carefully. Well, you don't really have a choice in that matter, you just can choose to die. All you have to do is sign this contract of loyalty to my organization, and you get the chance to become a rank 1 magus with an advanced meditation technique, not grind water, which uses up your lifespan. Lord Potter said as a scroll appeared with a green glow in his hand. It was probably a binding contract under the trial eye. Many of the acolytes were already excited about the chance of becoming an official magus, while they probably had no idea what the real difference between grind water and an advanced meditation technique was. They were not stupid. Murphy was not so easily blinded. Will this contract make us your slaves? No. It is a contract of loyalty. You will become regular members of my organization, you will have to follow its rules and contribute to it. But it also binds me with clauses that I will have to treat you fairly. Harry explained honestly. At least as far as Murphy could tell. It wasn't like he really had a choice. Murphy didn't want to die. He had long since given up to become an official magus. Grind water was rare and would just use up his remaining lifespan, but an advanced meditation technique was impossible to get. Murphy had already made up his mind, but there was one other question he had to know. What's the name of your organization? Dragon's Gate. Chapter 79. Harry Potter POV. Harry was inside his laboratory with Basida, attentively listening to her report. All of them have selected one of the mediation techniques most fitting for them and started practicing them. Murphy even is preparing to attempt his breakthrough this month. That's good. He nodded tuftfully. And they are all wearing the rings I prepared for them. Of course, after all, it's their contractual obligation. So what's up with these rings? She asked in curiosity. They are magic artifacts that allow me to monitor them and the changes inside their bodies in real time. The most recent result of my experiments. He replied. In fact, they are still an incomplete product. His current limit for an experiment. These rings originally were supposed to become AI chips themselves, extensions of his own AI chip using the souls and bodies of other magi to enhance his own. The idea is simple. Give his subordinate their own AI chips and assign them experiments or research. All of the new data would be collected together inside his own AI chip, allowing him to assign bothersome tasks to someone else. Unfortunately, the current result, with his limited capabilities in running and articulating, permits these rings to only act as sensors and recording devices directly connected to his AI chip. He still could hand over experiments and tasks he didn't want to do himself to others, but they just wouldn't be as efficient as with an AI chip assisting them in their duty. But it will be good enough to study the changes inside their body through the advanced meditation techniques he had collected in the Abyssal Bone Forest Academy. Valuable data he needed, even if they were only rank 1 meditation techniques, to sync a more powerful meditation technique. One more fitting for himself and others. Another experiment he was performing in that regard was to study and dissect the 2 magi he had captured on his way here. Sure, they were only rank 1 magi that had used grind water to advance, but even with an unstable foundation, they still underwent the same changes other magi did to become rank 1. I see. When are we going to use advanced meditation techniques ourselves? We would progress much faster. I can already see the effects on our new recruits. And most of them are less talented than even me. Basida questioned with interest. Once we got fitting meditation techniques of a higher level. Neela, Celeste, and Bicky will have to wait. They already are preparing for another task. Harry replied nonchalantly. Makes sense. And what am I going to do? Will I assist you with your experiments? She asked excitedly, a crafty look on her face. No. Harry denied as he pulled out a bottle with something red inside and ring out, you will have to do something else. This is the blood of a giant Chemoian serpent. In fact, all I have for now. It will take some months before I can produce more of it. Giant Chemoian serpents are rank 4 creatures. What am I going to do with it? Basida asked confused. She knew Harry had brought a snake with him from his journey but didn't realize until now what kind of bloodline it possessed. Suddenly she felt Harry's mind brush against hers. She didn't resist this familiar and comforting feeling as a stream of information entered her head. I just taught you the first 3 levels of Kyoman's pupil, an advanced meditation technique. It has 4 levels, but I only have these 3 for now. Your task is to use the ring and practice this meditation technique. It's the best meditation technique available on the South Coast right now," he stated calmly. Basita nodded in excitement. With that meditation technique, she will get the lead over Neela, Vicky, and that newcomer Celeste, who all have a higher talent than her. An advanced meditation technique can close that gap. Once she gets stronger, Harry will only have eyes for her. By advancing to an official magus, she will be even able to alter her shape and enhance her beauty even more. "I won't disappoint you," she said it in excitement. "I know." Harry smiled to her. He easily could guess what she was thinking. "Oh, and before you seclude yourself to learn the technique, bring this to Neela, Vicky, and Celeste. They are down in the dungeons." Harry had pulled out a strangely shaped fruit that Basita had never seen before. "What kind of fruit is this?" she asked, interested, as she observed the strange object in his hand. "It's related to their task. This fruit can grant others abilities, not weaker than the ones of an official magus. It's called a devil fruit." POV. Every day her life was turning worse. Right now she was in a rush to gather her things, packing them into her trunk. Her clothes, her books, just everything that she could carry with her hands and fit through the opening of her trunk. On the other end of the hallways of the upper floor of her home, she could hear her parents being busy with the very same task. They hadn't much time anymore. All of this was very rushed, but this country was just no longer safe for people like them. The other side had won, and she was using the resulting chaos to save the lives of her parents and herself. It wasn't like she had much choice. After all, their hope to win this war had dissipated without a trace. Nobody was able to find him. The only thing they knew was that he was still alive somewhere. She brushed a lock of her bushy brown hairs out of her face as she kept gathering the things out of her room. She was just glad that her school things were already packed, since she didn't bother unpacking after coming home. To make things overall worse, the only person that had prevented them from losing this war had just died. Now there was nobody that could keep him in check. Not the ministry, nor the teachers, nor the Aurors, and especially not the Order of the Phoenix. None of them stood a chance against Voldemort. Her whole 6th year in Hogwarts had been terrible. First, her best friend, her only best friend, had disappeared, no trace of him all year. The one person she thought she could rely on, her supposedly other best friend, Ronald Weasley, had distanced himself from her. Deep inside, she had known it. Felt it. Ronald had only been her friend because the famous Harry Potter was her friend. At first he tried to be normal around her, only to once again get his hands on her schoolwork. But the moment she didn't want to share her work with him, the curtain had fallen and Ronald had revealed his true face. Hermione Granger was no longer his friend. She probably never was. Ginny wasn't much better. She always had the strange impression that the red-headed girl never liked her, but she never really showed it. She was in fact rather nice, and Hermione felt bad for always having that impression. Unfortunately, that impression had been right. Ginny had seen her as competition for Harry's heart, which was utterly ridiculous. Harry was her best friend. Seemingly the only one. She missed him. Without him, she felt lonely. Sure, the other Gryffindors didn't treat her any differently, but she had never really fit into the House of the Lion. Her interests were just too different. Until this year, Gryffindor had felt like home, but without Harry, it felt like she was a stranger. The cruel rumors Ron and Ginny were spreading about her didn't make things nicer. Most of her time she spent with Luna Lovegood. If you ignore her uniqueness, she had a refreshing and intelligent perspective on the world. And still, all these problems are so mundane in comparison to what was going on outside and even inside of Hogwarts. At first she had tried to ignore it and focus on her studies. After all, Dumbledore was still there, he would find Harry, and he would keep Voldemort in check. Then the Death Eaters infiltrated Hogwarts and killed Dumbledore. The illusion she built around herself to cope with her stress had shattered. Hermione Granger had realized what kind of danger she was. She had read the history books about the First War. She had heard the stories. Her fate wouldn't be kind. And she was alone. Bigotry was not exclusive to the Death Eaters. Both sides were similar bigoted, just one would outright torture and kill her, while the other would look down on her. Without Harry, she was just another Muggle born for the Order of the Phoenix. Well, not for all. Some were really nice and competent. Like Tonks, Shacklebolt, Remus, Mr. Weasley, or Fleur. But for most of them, she was just an underaged muggleborn who shouldn't be involved in the Order of the Phoenix. The night Dumbledore had died and fallen from the astronomy tower, Hermione had realized how naive she had been. She didn't wait anymore for someone else to solve her problem but began to tackle it logically. There was no way she could stop or beat the Death Eaters. Without Dumbledore, the Order of the Phoenix was a lost cause. The influence of people like Shacklebolt was just too low. And the Ministry was just incompetent. Instead, the very same night she had started making a list of topics she should research for her own survival. Some wards, the expansion charm, and other useful or defensive pieces of magic. Still in Hogwarts, she had placed an undetectable expansion charm on her trunk, where they are usually highly regulated and illegal without permission. Who cares, the Ministry will fall any day now. In fact, that was the last update she had received this morning from Tonks. While she had been still in Hogwarts, she had already written to her parents to prepare plane tickets out of Britain. They needed to move. Hermione didn't even need to convince her parents. After returning home from her 5th year, she had been completed down and hysteric because of Harry's disappearance. She had revealed the full truth to her parents. Her parents had indicated they needed to move, but Hermione didn't just want to abandon her friends and Britain. But after this terrible 6th year, she no longer had such problems. Now there were only 2 things on her mind: flee and protect her family and find Harry. The moment the plane took off from the ground, she felt that her decision to flee had been the right one. After the Ministry had fallen, she didn't feel that the restraint of underage magic should hinder her. The Ministry is occupied with different things right now. She had placed all the wards she knew around their home, just in case they were too slow. And these wards had just broken while she was sitting in the plane taking them away from Britain. Well, it didn't matter right now. Wizards, especially purebloods, were far too ignorant to track non-magical ways of traveling. Instead, she focused more on their flight goal. Japan sounds nice enough, far away from Voldemort, and it even had a magical school with Mahout Okoro. Still, will she ever return? Chapter 80. Harry Potter POV. Once again, it was a beautiful day. The sun shone on the horizon as Harry was enjoying his lavish breakfast on the balcony of the tallest tower of Viscount Jackson's former castle. Well, former castle because, in all but its official name, it had become his personal residence and the headquarters of his organization over these last 1.5 years he had spent in Extreme Night City. Like so often he couldn't really enjoy his breakfast, even though he had a nice view, landscape-wise, and by the people around him. After all, Neela, Vicky, Basita, and Celeste were all beauties in their own styles. He lives a life of luxury even compared to his previous life in a modern world. Sure, he was missing the modern appliances, they're replaced by the servants taking care of his needs. And even then, every day he has this feeling of unrestness. After all, he was sent here by being reckless. While he had made sure that everything was taken care of if something like this would happen, which seemed to have worked since he wasn't dead yet through his contracts. Harry, in fact, hadn't been really prepared for this to truly happen. He had gained so much fundamental knowledge that had been really helpful, especially in the science and soul department. But the price hadn't been worth it. How are the others on Skagos? Are they safe? Well, they should be. Logically, there should be nothing that could threaten them. While the people around him were not strong enough to conquer the world, their powers and the island's natural defenses made it impossible for it to be conquered by anyone in the world. At least as far as he knew. There was still that thing up north. But it hadn't moved in thousands of years, so why now? Still, he was missing them. He was missing Lust, Robin, and the others. His partner, Tiamat, probably has grown massively in these last 3 years he has been missing. It's sad that he was missing all her growth, but if he focuses really hard, he was able to feel her presence in this strange and disorganized way, but she was alive. Then there were the many other questions he had. How are the players in Sao? Did his assistance, even while not longer being there, save many lives? After all, they should be through with the game by now. Did some players choose to stay on Skagos? How was the war going in Allegasia? The timeline of the original story is a bit hard to track, but it should also be coming to an end by now. Galbatorix should have discovered the true name of the ancient language at this point. Did the people of Ames Tries beat Father and survive? These events should have happened a few months after his disappearance. Man, he hated that he had missed the reunion of Lieutenant Colonel Hughes and his family. He is such a nice character that Harry had made a point in saving him. Are you okay, Harry? Neela asked him as she looked at him with worry. They had become more perceptive of his moods after advancing to the level of an official magus, probably because their senses had improved. Yes, Neela, Vicky, Celeste, and, of course, Basita had all become official magus already. I am fine. Just a bit melancholic. He replied as he observed them. They were coming along nicely, the meditation techniques he had created for them were really fitting. A result of his continuous research in Extreme Night City. Don't worry, Harry, we will help you get home. I really want to see your home too. Vicky added encouragingly as the other three girls nodded. Celeste said, we could always use that method. No. That one is too risky. Such a move has put me in this situation in the first place. It is plan B if my advancement to rank 1 magus shouldn't reveal a path forward. Harry said firmly. Yes, he still was a peak rank 3 acolyte, not an official magus. Harry Potter, rank 3 acolyte, strength, 8.9, agility, 7.9, vitality, 9.1, spiritual force, 15.8, 223, magic power, 238, status, healthy. In fact, he is ready to advance anytime now and didn't even rely on potions, unlike the other members of Dragon's Gate. His foundation was as stable as possible. But it wasn't really the right time for himself to advance yet. While he had an in-depth understanding of the advancement to rank 1 magus, thanks to the many branches of research his organization had performed, he had recorded and analyzed the changes in the process very often by now. The very first acolyte in Dragon's Gate had been Murphy. The old man had a very stable foundation, being a peak acolyte for decades. While becoming a bit rusty, having not practiced his spell models, it hadn't hurt his cultivation. All he had always lacking was an actual way to become a magus, and as he got older, grind water was no longer an option, and advanced meditation techniques were extremely regulated or rare. Not even a week after getting an advanced meditation technique, Murphy had become a rank 1 magus, while Harry had collected valuable data and an extremely knowledgeable follower whose lifespan has effectively doubled, with a big information network that he had built over the years. With the potions that enhance spiritual force, Harry also had an easy way to cultivate more and more rank 1 magi. Of course he had abused his control over Extreme Night City to build the necessary infrastructure to grow more of the needed ingredients. Dragon's Gate was steadily growing. While it was only a secret organization that spread over mouth propaganda, its members knew many wandering acolytes who once again knew even more. It was steadily growing unnoticed from any of the established organizations since the binding contracts were watertight and prevented the information from truly spreading. The possibility of advancing to the level of a rank 1 magus was just too alluring, especially with an advanced meditation technique that had a far bigger success rate than the grind water method. This fact allowed Dragon's Gate to grow exponentially. Now secretly spread all over the Dark Magus territory with an extremely profitable network, giving Harry to different magus markets all over the continent. At this point, he had hundreds of rank 1 magi under him and 10,000 acolytes, even Neela and Vicky had brought their families in. After they realized the two of them had become official magi, they had become effectively the leaders of their respective families. Every member was contributing in some form, be it resources or knowledge. While everyone joining Dragon's Gate had the right to an advanced meditation technique, resources and other knowledge still needed to be exchanged for contributions. After all, Harry didn't gain anything from hoarding his meditation techniques, his contracts were foolproof. With more people practicing them, he would gather more data. And wandering acolytes had a lot of different types of knowledge. Some new recruits contributed even different incomplete meditation techniques, and while not really usable to advance to rank 1, it still gave Harry insight into different approaches. While on one person alone, each bit of knowledge was kind of esoteric and limited, but gathered together gave him a very extensive database of information, resulting in having a very thorough understanding of at least the first level of the Magus path. Unfortunately, this was the limit he could gain from wandering acolytes and most organizations. Anything related to rank 2 and higher was zealously protected by any organization in the South Coast. But he wasn't without hope for higher level information. He still had Kyomin's pupil as a base, gaining more knowledge through Basita. And after he finally managed to complete a fully functional sub-AI chip, her efficacy and data collection had improved tremendously. Unfortunately, while he could produce as many sensor rings as he wanted, fully functional sub-AI chip rings were far more limited. Limited by one thing: his own soul. The method he had come up with was effectively creating a smaller version of an Horcrux, which he calls Soul Seed, and putting it into the ring. He was limited by the amount of soul seeds he could create because he didn't want to damage his own soul. Creating one soul seed at once allows his soul to recover naturally after a few days. But the more soul he used at once, the weaker he got. That's why the sub-AI chip rings were only spread to the most necessary people, his inner circle, and the best researchers in the organization, like Murphy. Basida and her Kyoman's pupil technique weren't the only sources of information he had on how to evolve into a higher being. After all, the path of a Magus was nothing else than using sense and natural phenomena from different worlds to evolve into a higher being. And he had one thing that fit into this description perfectly, or rather a small collection of these things. Devil fruits. This was the research project Neela, Vicky, and Celeste had been responsible for. The first step had been to acquire all fruit orchards and similar places around Extreme Night City. Meanwhile, the three girls had established their laboratory down in the dungeon. Every criminal in the city had become their experimental subject. First they had forced them into slavery contracts before feeding them a devil fruit and beginning to experiment, dissect, and study them. Until these prisoners died. Since they have control over all fruit-producing places around the city and the region, the devil fruits would reappear in one of them and find its way back to them. This was a very effective method. Until now, Harry had only to go out twice and locate the devil fruit himself again because it had moved out of their reach. Devil fruits were an extremely fitting study subject for Magi. While their effective evolution was a bit limited in the scope of abilities one could use, the resulting mutation through eating a fruit with enough training could reach the strength of a rank 3 Magus at the very least. More powerful fruits like Logias, rare Paramecias, or ancient and mythical Zoans were even comparable to rank 4 or 5 Magi. This allowed Harry to develop new advanced meditation techniques with at least 2 levels completed. These were the ones his inner circle was using. Neela had become a fire Magus, based on a meditation technique of the Mara Mara no Mi. Vicky a lightning Magus with a technique based on the Goro Goro no Mi. Celeste had used a meditation technique based on the Bari Bari no Mi, which made her a particular valuable Magus in any organization because this allowed her to create different barriers around their territory. Ranging from defensive to even more specialized ones like concealing ones. For now, their limit was rank 2, even if they are still a bit away from that level. But Harry simply lacked any higher level meditation technique for reference. He had started using less talented members of their organization by granting them experimental versions of higher levels for their respective meditation techniques, just like the ancient Magi had developed higher levels. But the progress was slow. Pupil as a perfected meditation technique alone was simply not enough as a reference. Especially since it only relied on a bloodline. He would need to get more. He had come far, but he still wasn't sure how he could safely return home to Skagos. All his newfound knowledge and influence didn't grant him an answer. In the end, this particular morning turned out to be different. They were in the middle of discussing their upcoming plans, as Harry, Neela, Vicky, and Basida all suddenly stopped while Celeste looked at them confused. What happened? She asked, unsure. It was Harry that responded, the Abyssal Bone Forest Academy has sent us a message. The war has ended.
Thanks for listening.